The Kalos region, I would say, is underrated. It's the smallest dex by far, but I think they've showed quality over quantity, and its starter trio is no different. We're rating them all, and we have made it to the Kalos region, and Chespin, my boy, is one of the most unjustly hated starter Pokemon of all time. Its stat spread is pretty solid for an early game grass type, good attack, defense, and decent HP while sacrificing speed. But its move pool complements that really well, a buffed up physical Vine Whip, growth, bite, and rollout for coverage, and the ever amazing Leech Seed on top. And with starters, we have the luxury of looking at specific gym matchups since this is the only region that they're in. And in this case, Chespin literally sweeps the first gym by itself with rollout as long as your accuracy stands, 4.5 stars in battle prowess. And as is the case with every starter, depending on your choice, it is either available for the entire game or not at all. Therefore, it gets what's essentially like a version exclusive penalty and 4.5 stars. Conceptually, it may not be anything crazy, but it's nice. It's basically a mix of a little hedgehog and a chestnut, turning it into like a little living Sandspur, the bane of my childhood, or the spiny nut Pokemon. Nothing too exciting, but a nice start for a grass starter, 3 stars. But I personally love this little guy's design. I'm honestly kind of surprised that it's the least favorite of the Kalos trio. It channels the same energy as Turtwig, which I think is the best designed grass starter. It has a kind, happy face with the cute little rodent teeth, but with the giant claws on the feet along with the spines along its head and even the red tip to its tail really do a good job at showing how this is supposed to be a defensive Pokemon who can still pack a punch. The color scheme is also perfect. The light and dark brown fit well with both its mammal and nut inspirations, and the light green coat on top still works perfectly while helping it show that it's a grass type. You guys voted this one at 4, almost 4.5 stars, but I agree more with 4.5 stars for sure. So that plants its final score at a solid 4.125 stars overall, just short of the starter's top 5. Oh, but Quilladin. Is Quilladin actually the worst middle stage starter of all time? We're rating them all, and it's definitely in the running, but this is definitely not true in battle. First off, base 95 defense at level 16 is amazing, and its attack is really good too. Just avoid fast special attackers and let Leech Seed keep it on the field while you chip away with its pretty decent move pool, which admittedly could be a bit better. It does also have very good matchups into the Kalos gyms though. With TMs like Rock Smash, Aerial Ace, Bulldoze, and Rock Tomb, Quilladin is a good answer into most of the Pokemon in gyms 2 through 5. 4 stars in battle prowess. For availability, it will get the same 4.5 stars as every other starter, of course, and for concept, it is mostly the same as the Hedgehog, Chestnut, Chespin, but now seems to have evolved into a more armored type of mammal, but pretty much the same though, so it'll say 3 stars. But its design, the poor guy got absolutely roasted in the favorites polls, and unsurprisingly got voted down at about 1 to 2 stars in both polls. And sadly, I get it, this is one of the worst looking starters total. It's just like too round, and its face being flush to the body really doesn't help with that at all. It has a great color scheme, it portrays the concept of a defensive nut-like grass-type mammal very well, but it just looks really bad. The one defense that I have for it is that it does look exactly like this stage in a chestnut's growth, but sadly that's not enough, 2 stars, which will sadly put its final score down to 3.375 stars overall, joining the other mid-starters in the bottom 5. But what about Chestnut? Chestnut is one of the most criminally underrated starter Pokemon of all time. We're rating them all, and hear me out. Firstly, in battle, its grass fighting typing was a fun twist on the trend of fighting type starters right before this, but said typing is also really solid in battle as long as you avoid flying types. But its stats are great. 88 HP, 107 attack, and 122 defense is really nice, especially with its fantastic move pool of Leech Seed, Seed Bomb, Bulk Up, Body Slam, Wood Hammer, Hammer Arm, Spiky Shield, and a plethora of great TMs for coverage and setup, making Chestnut an incredible physical tank if you mind your matchups. But sadly, it really does suffer against the final 3 gyms in Kalos. It's fine against Wolfric, but that's really not saying a lot. Then it's great into half of the Elite Four at least. It's not quite 5 stars, but it is very good. 4.5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability, like all starters, is 4.5 stars since they are either available right away or not at all. But concept is where Chestnut really shines. Basically, it's again a mix of an armored mammal inspiration and chestnuts, of course. But the whole Kalos trio is based off of D&D or RPG classes in general. Chestnuts being the fighter or barbarian, which is awesome on its own, or you could spin it into like a medieval fantasy direction instead, with Chestnut being the knight to the mage or ninja. There's also some fairly clear EOD inspirations with the bomb suit looking armor and the dex entry that specifically mentions bomb resistance. 5 stars. But what about its design? Neither it or Delphox really stood a chance in the favorites race, of course, but it did surprisingly pull fairly high on its own, around 4 or 4.5 stars. I have always loved Chestnut, but I thought the community really didn't, and I've never quite understood why, but I can see its downsides. Firstly, its shiny color should have 1000% been its base form. It looks so much better in every way. It sticks closer to the color palettes of its pre-evolutions, and it gives it that strong sense of an earthy warrior or guardian which fits perfectly with its concept. But that's not what happened. Its actual colors, being these pure whites and very light browns, really throws it off. Its upper half still looks really cool though, with the giant powerful arms and huge spiky shell. Even its face looks pretty good, but what is up with its almost humanoid skinny little torso and legs? They really take away from the menace that this design is supposed to be. As much as I love Chestnut, I think you guys are a bit high on it. This seems more like a 3.5 star design to me, sadly. But it still managed to hold on to a 4.375 star final score and a spot on the starters top 5. Yet it will be redeemed. Mega Chestnut the Redeemer has not only saved its evolution line, but also already climbed the ranks as one of my favorite Pokemon overall. But we're rating them all, and how will it stack up against the other starters or ZA Megas? Well, in battle, we don't really know, so let's pretend that we put it in a normal Pokemon game, where its 172 defense, 137 attack, and 115 special defense is downright amazing. Your quad weakness, it's fine. Between Leech Seed and Bulk Up to set up and stay healthy, Close Combat and Woodhammer to wreck shop, and some pretty awesome TMs to boot, yeah, that's 5 stars in battle prowess. But availability will be these Kalos Starter Megas Kryptonite. They are all locked behind paid online ranked battles, which whether they're difficult to get or not isn't really the point. We've set things like that and DLC to be 0.5 stars in availability. But conceptually, Chestnut was already awesome as the D&D or medieval fantasy inspired warrior or barbarian class slapped onto an armored mammal fused with a chestnut, whose shell even carries some pretty clear EOD ties. Hilariously awesome. Then its Mega becomes a warrior king, 5 stars. But this is absolute peak Mega design. I'd argue this is one of the best Mega designs that we've ever gotten. It lengthens those arm spikes into terrifying weapons, it dons the crown of a king and a tattered red cape, then throws on some spiky shields on top as almost giant shoulder guards, and its scruff is reminiscent of a giant white beard. The fur on the torso now looks like scale mail armor, and it even bulks up the legs a bit and squats down to help its otherwise top-heavy design. And it gets a giant axe. I'm shocked it lost the favorites poll, even if Mega Delphox is great. But it did very easily pull 5 stars on its own, and obviously I agree, 5 stars. But alas, that still settles our king down to a 3.875 star final score. Fennekin has always been the Kalos starter that I just kinda care the least about, but it is cute. We're rating them all, and hey, at least in battle, little dude is actually pretty awesome. 60s in speed, special attack, and special defense is great in the early game, but really all it gets moves-wise is Ember and Flame Charge later, which would be weaker, but still the speed is nice. It's no Bite, Leech Seed, and Rollout, but it's still good, especially since with the starters we can look at specific matchups in the region where Fennekin of course shines against the Bug-type gym leader and all of the grass and bug types on the way to it. It's not game breaking, but it's still amazing early on. 4.5 stars in battle prowess. It will also get 4.5 stars in availability since like every other starter, it is available either for the entire game or not available at all. And conceptually, this is very clearly a Fennec Fox, and its evolutions lean a lot heavier into the Kitsune aspects of course, but there are still hints of it here for sure. Pretty cool, 3.5 stars. Design though, I really kind of feel like it's not that great. On one hand, it is very cute, there's no denying that. The giant eyes on the head that's too big for its body, and the tiny little paws and big fluffy tail. Textbook cute first stage design there. However, this is like literally a cartoonized Fennec Fox, but with the additional ear tufts, which are weird and only gets worse as it evolves. In the favorites polls, it got a solid second place though, and it otherwise polled around 4 to 5 stars, which is a bit much. I'll meet in the middle at 4 stars here because it is at least adorable. So hey, that actually gives it 4.125 stars overall, the same score as Chespin. Who's the bigger industry plant, Braixen or Greninja? We're rating them all, and well, both for very different reasons, but firstly, in battle, Braixen is pretty solid for sure. It gets 90 special attack, which is amazing at level 16, but really doesn't add too much for speed or bulk upon evolution, which means it will start to get outclassed in the mid-game before it evolves. Its move pool is also good, but not amazing. Sure, Side Beam and Light Screen are nice, even though it still isn't a psychic type, but you're stuck with just Ember and Flame Charge for a stab fire move until after it evolves, which really sucks actually. Then it's awful into the second gym, but pretty great into gyms 3, 4, and 5. This is a really tough one to place, but I think that its gym matchups save it and give it 4 stars. But just like all the starters, it will get the standard 4.5 stars in availability, and conceptually, the Fennec Fox now does thankfully lean further into the Kitsune inspiration, which are associated with fire and witchcraft, which of course ties into the trio's pretty clear RPG or medieval style classes, Braixen and Delphox being pretty clearly based on some variants of wizard or sorcerer. But it also has a bunch of design inspirations from Schoolgirl
uniforms? Here we go. Okay, conceptually, I think that deserves 5 stars, but design-wise, I have always kind of despised the design, even long before I learned what the internet thinks of it, ya nasties. But now that I'm digging a bit deeper into the inspiration behind the design, it's actually very well done. I still don't like its giant ear tufts at all, I think they're really dumb looking, but having the stick stored in its fluffy tail, which then ignites when it's drawn like a matchstick, is a really cool detail. And once you learn the schoolgirl thing, yeah, I could absolutely see that the outfit here with the skirt and the hose on the legs. Let's assume their intentions were pure here, and in that case, I think this might actually be a better design than Delphox. It surprisingly is mostly winning in the favorites polls, and again got voted around 4.5 stars, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I kind of agree. Even though I don't like it at all, it's a great middle stage design. 4.5 stars. Which, oh no, that gives it 4.5 stars overall and a spot on the top 5? What have I done? Hot take, but Delphox is the worst design in both its trio and its evolution line. We're rating them all, and okay, well, in battle at least for a playthrough, Delphox is arguably the best of the 3. Fire Psychic is an incredible type combination. It's 114 special attack paired with 100s in special defense, and speed is genuinely great. Then by level up, not only does it get powerful offensive options like Psyshock, Flamethrower, and Psychic, but it also gets support with Light Screen, Will-O-Wisp, and Sunny Day. Then you pair that with TMs for setup and coverage like Calm Mind, Solar Beam, Shadow Ball, and Grass Knot that allows you to pretty handily crush the last 3 to 4 gyms in Kalos. But the Elite Four is actually not a great spot for it. If they just gave it a single fairy type move, it would have been amazing into at least 2 of them, but it's good into the champion as well, so I think regardless it still managed to get 5 stars in battle prowess. As for availability, like all of the starters, it is either available for the whole game or is not available at all, so it gets the choice and consequence penalty and 4.5 stars. And for concept, as we said with Breaksin, it is very clearly a fennec fox with heavier kitsune inspiration, which are magical foxes from Japanese folklore who also have powers of fire. And fitting with the rest of the trio, it also pretty clearly is supposed to be the wizard, mage, or sorcerer from RPGs or medieval fantasy. There is also this darker side to it too, but regardless, 5 stars for a great starter concept. However, like I said, I think its design is the worst in its evolution line. Yes, Fennekin was extremely simple, but it was equally as adorable, and Breaksin was very questionable, but equally as well designed and detailed. Then Delphox is, I don't know man, the giant ear tufts continue to get worse, and now sure, the darker burnt orange parts are supposed to be like wizard robes and sleeves, but it never came off that way to me, especially in its actual in-game sprites where it's just an overly hairy fox standing upright. Its official art does a lot of heavy lifting here with the dynamic pose and the lit stick wand, which they restrict to its battle animations in-game. You guys voted this one around 4 to 4.5 stars, but I think that it's much lower, so I'll meet in the middle at 3.5 stars, which still does give Delphox a 4.5 star final score and a spot on the starters top 5. Delphox's new Mega Evolution, in my opinion, absolutely saved its design. We're rating them all, and not only that, it absolutely broke this thing in battle. 159 special attack and around 130s in both speed and special defense is amazing, obviously. And so is its move pool with hard-hitting offensive moves, some support, and they finally gave it a fairy type move, unlike in Kalos, not to mention Calm Mind and nasty plot for setup. Yeah, this is clearly 5 stars in battle prowess. However, these Kalos starter Mega Evolutions are locked behind paid online multiplayer battles, which is just such a stupid decision, therefore it gets half a star according to our new system. Yet Delphox was already awesome conceptually, with it being a kitsune, fennec, fox, wizard, or mage, tying in with its trio's D&D inspiration, which its Mega Evolution sticks with and just dials up a bit, which again will get it 5 stars in concept. And for design, it actually pulled as the favorite over Chestnut the Redeemer, surprisingly, as well as very easily being voted at 5 stars, and I totally agree with the latter part. Turning its coat into that deep purple or black is a really nice nod to shiny Delphox, as well as lengthening the fur even more, I think helps portray the loose wizard coat and sleeves that I think regular Delphox did not execute well. The longer white beard also fits better in that regard this time too, all topped off by the fact that it is not only riding a flaming broom, but flanked by 2 other flying flaming brooms as well. This is an awesome Mega 5-star design. So that will elevate its final score up to 3.875 stars overall. And click here if you want to see how the other starters in Legends ZA have fared so far. Froakie is just a perfectly fine first stage water starter. We're rating them all, and yeah, that works for how it fares in battle as well, with its fast mixed attacker stat spread. Its move pool might be the worst of the three. Quick attack isn't all that helpful for an already fast Pokemon, but Bubble and Water Pulse are decent. Again, it's no Vine Whip, Bite, Leech Seed, and Rollouts. Okay, at least it's better than Fennekin's moves. However, it is also the least useful starter into the first gym. Froakie's kinda mid in battle, not gonna lie. 3.5 stars. Availability though, as always for starters, since it's either available for the entire game or not at all, it will get 4.5 stars. Concept does seem to be most water starters' downfall, and Froakie here, at least in game, is no different. It's a frog. A water frog that uses foam around its neck, like some actual frogs do. But in the anime, at least, it tied into Greninja's future by letting it use said foam as a hood or mask, making it kind of a thief-like, I suppose? Kinda weak, but I'll go with 3 stars. Design-wise, it's also fine. Like, there's nothing special about it, but it does serve its purpose reasonably well. This is a very clearly fast and agile little water frog with the prototypical first stage big eyes and head on a small body thing. Surprisingly, it was heavily the favorite in the trio, yet unsurprisingly, you guys voted it around 4.5 stars like most Pokemon, but again, I think that's too high. We'll settle for 4 stars to be fair. So sorry to burst your bubble, Froakie, but you get 3.75 stars overall, a bit lower than the other two and just outside of the bottom 5. Frogadier might be the best middle stage water starter outside of Duat, but to be fair, that's a very low bar. We're rating them all, and I do not mean in battle. Its main downside is its low defenses and HP, and in the early game, its 97 speed and 83 special attack is enough to one-shot most things, so you're fine. But by the time it's about to evolve, that starts to become a major issue. And its move pool is actually kinda garbage. Water Pulse is great, but you don't really get anything at all that's useful until it evolves otherwise. It does basically sweep through Gym 2, which is nice, but then it's between okay and horrible in the next 3 gyms. This is by far the worst of the 3 middle stage starters for a Kalos playthrough, 3 stars in battle prowess. Availability to the rescue though, as like every other starter, it will get 4.5 stars in availability. Conceptually, it is more or less the same conversation as Froakie. It's based on a few different frog species, and the whole ninja inspiration of this line is still blurry here, but it is getting clearer. Its dex entries talk about its precision and unparalleled swiftness, and again, you tell me if this counts or not, but in the anime it shows it running on water, which of course follows the ninja idea even more. Either way, it is getting cooler for sure. 3.5 stars. But like I said, I would argue this is a top 3 water starter middle stage, even if that's not saying a lot. It's a pretty rough group. Yet funnily enough, the design aspects themselves on Frogadier aren't that impressive. It's still just a thin, nimble frog. Now with the bubble scarf trailing as an almost cape or cloth like you see in stereotypical ninja depictions, its pose though is arguably the best part, which I don't know if that's a good thing, but its almost 3-point stance ready to explode off the line with its hand back ready to strike helps a lot with the ninja idea of this Pokemon. It did lose to Braixen in the favorites poll, but it also polled pretty well on its own, and I agree with you guys, 4 stars here. Which will give Frogadier the final score of 3.875 stars overall, again barely missing the bottom 5. Greninja has officially joined Charizard in the club of Pokemon that were so popular and so loved that now people hate it, or at least claim to be different. We're rating them all, and that does not change the fact that it is incredible in battle. Water Dark is an awesome type stylistically and pretty solid in battle as well. Its 122 speed along with its around 100 in both attacks, however, is very nice to go along with it, compounded by its great level up move pool consisting of Night Slash, Shadow Sneak, Water Shuriken, Extra Sensory, and TMs like Ice Beam, Scald, Acrobatics, U-Turn, and plenty more. It's amazing into Gym 7 and okay into 8, then amazing into 3/4 of the Elite 4 plus the Champion. It could use a solid setup move for sure, but it still gets 5 stars in battle prowess. Availability, however, like every other starter, since they are either available for the entire game or not at all, it will basically get a version exclusive penalty and 4.5 stars, which was the only thing that kept Infernape from being a perfect 5-star starter, so will Greninja fare the same? Well, in concept, this line as a whole has been a pretty cool water frog, but nothing too interesting to set it above that. Greninja, however, not only dives further into the starter trio's D&D basis, this time being a rogue of course, but also seems to draw inspiration from the tale of the gallant Jiraiya, a ninja who can shapeshift into a toad. With all of that combined, yeah, I think it gets a 5-star concept. And design, I mean, this is quite literally one of the most popular Pokemon of all time, appearing in so many side games and basically getting 2 megas, which will get their own video. Therefore, it is no surprise at all that even with all of these quirky new Greninja haters, it still blew the favorites poll out of the water and got overwhelmingly 5 stars on its own. But I'm gonna meet in the middle. I'm just kidding. Just look at this thing. The tongue scarf is so unique and creative, the darker blue fits great with its general ninja rogue idea, not to mention the amazing shiny, and like Frogadier, they absolutely nailed the pose, which in the 3D games is not a common statement. This is obviously a 5-star design, guys. Greninja is awesome, even if it's not my favorite Kalos starter. So that does give Greninja a whopping 4.875 stars overall, tying Infernape for the highest starter score overall. Ash Greninja, despite a real Mega now existing, is still the best Greninja form. We're writing a ball, and we'll get into how you actually get this thing later, but if you do have it, over 130 in speed and both attack stats is insane on its own. Not to mention the fact that it boosts its water shurikens to go along with its otherwise pretty incredible move pool and amazing TM compatibility. I don't think I really need to elaborate here, this is pretty clearly 5 stars in battle prowess. But for availability, how do you even get this thing? I don't know, man. Apparently it was a special Sun or Moon demo exclusive that you had to then transfer back to your main game, but that's not even actually possible anymore apparently, so I guess that's 0 stars, but I admittedly have no idea, so let me know if I'm wrong. And Greninja already got 5 stars in concept for being a cool ninja frog, which is partially based on the tale of Jiraiya, as well as being the rogue in the starters trio's D&D thing that they have going on. Then Ash Greninja specifically gains this new form through its bond with Ash, which is exactly how they explain regular megas in the anime, but this one doesn't require a megastone. I don't know, either way, I don't see a reason to drop it down from 5 stars, of course. And for design, as I said, I think this might just be the best looking of the 3 Greninja forms. Now, yes, it's close. Base Greninja is iconic, and Mega Greninja is pretty cool, but the shuriken on the back both looks awesome and helps drive home the water ninja idea. Then the red crest on its head helps it pop and look more dangerous, and something that I never noticed, but this comment pointed out, it even gets Ash's little lightning bolt cheeks, which is hilariously a great detail. It didn't pull as heavily as 5 stars as Base Greninja, but it still is very clearly a 5-star design. This is reminiscent of a mythical score for sure, as Ash Greninja gets 3.75 stars overall, actually the same as Froakie and Frogadier. If they didn't make Ash Greninja the actual Mega, they should have at least made it different, or gone with the X and Y Mega thing that we've seen in other fan favorites. We're writing them all, and yeah, it's pretty busted in battle, obviously, but it is almost the exact same as Ash Greninja, just worse. At least stats-wise, it's faster, a tiny bit bulkier, but weaker offensively. Water Dark is, of course, a very cool type combo, but they did set this one apart by giving it both Swords Dance to take advantage of its great physical moveset, and they gave it Nasty Plot, too, so it's now special Water Shurikens and Ice Beams, etc. are even more awesome. Okay, yeah, fair enough, that's clearly 5 stars. But again, these Kalos starter Megas being locked behind online battles and a paywall is such a stupid and greedy idea, but regardless, according to our new system, that gives it half a star in availability. And as we've said twice before, Greninja already got 5 stars in concept for being a cool ninja frog, which plays into the starter trio's D&D class idea as a rogue, while also being inspired by the story of a shapeshifting ninja toad in the gallant Jiraiya. Mega Greninja then spins its giant shuriken in high speeds to make it float like a helicopter, yet it still somehow stays facing one direction while clinging to said spinning object. Pokemon logic at its finest, but no reason to drop it from 5 stars. Design, however, is somehow both really cool and incredibly disappointing and stupid at the same time. Firstly, the Greninja itself, if you flip it right side up and look at the actual details, it's really awesome. The new sharper light blue head crest matching the shuriken really well, then the black body matching Greninja's shiny, and the blue hands and feet to add even further depth to the color scheme, and my favorite detail is the little mini shurikens on the hips. Without a doubt, the coolest looking Greninja itself to date. However, flip it back upside down and let it float around on a shuriken, and it just looks so stupid. It is such a boring idea for a Mega. Yes, ninjas hang upside down and stuff, I get the inspiration, but that doesn't make it any less dumb looking. And you guys do seem to agree, as it handily lost the favorites poll and didn't even pull 5 stars, where the other Greninjas very, very clearly did. This is a tough one to judge for sure, but I'm with you guys, that's a 4-star design. Which will flip Mega Greninja's final score down to 3.625 stars overall, technically putting it in the starters bottom 5, but avoiding the Mega's bottom 5. And click one of these 2 videos to see how the other 2 Kalos starter lines did. The early route mammal rodent things haven't done great in our Rate 'em All series so far, but let's see how Little Bunnelby fares. Well, in battle, it's the worst one so far, actually. Sure, it's fast, but its other stats across the board are not good at all. It's simultaneously one of the weakest ones defensively and offensively, which sure would be saved by its hidden ability Huge Power, but since we don't count those here, I guess its cheek pouch ability helps a little bit, and sure, early Mud Slap is nice, but it's just not good enough. Even for the early game, this is one of your worst options. 1 star in battle prowess. Availability, however, has of course been this archetype saving grace, as that's like the whole point, and Bunnelby is available before the first gym in both Kalos and Galar, so that's 5 stars. But Concept, inversely, has been their greatest weakness, and Bunnelby again is not really any different. Sure, it uses its ears to dig instead of its feet, which is something, but it's still more or less just a rabbit that digs, which rabbits already do. 2 stars. Design also sadly isn't a whole lot to write home about, though I will admit for no good reason at all it is among my favorites in this category. I guess I just like the brown ears, feet, and collar, and of course the little bunny rabbit face and proportions are pretty cute. It's not a bad design at all, it's perfectly plain for what it is. The poll says 3 stars, and I agree, 3 stars. Which will burrow Little Bunnelby's final score down to 2.75 stars overall, the second lowest of the group so far. Diggersby's gotta be in the running for one of the worst Route 1 mammals, right? We're writing a model, and that's even fair to say in battle. Now sadly for Diggersby here, we do not count hidden abilities, which is like this thing's only redeeming quality, as without it, its 50s in attack stats for a fully evolved Pokemon is laughable. Sure, it's bulky and fast enough, and its cheek pouch ability is decent, and okay, this thing has a kind of awesome move pool actually, at least once you get to the reminder, as well as sporting some amazing TMs. So it may not be useless, but it's still not good at all. 2.5 stars in battle prowess. Availability, however, as is the case with most of these Route 1-ish Pokemon, will of course be 5 stars. And hey, at least it takes a little bit of a step up in concept. It's still a rabbit, of course, but now it's much more clearly based on excavators, as well as the construction workers themselves and middle-aged men in general. Pretty funny, I guess. 3 stars. And its design, to be fair, does portray actually all 3 of those things fairly well. Too bad the end result of said inspiration is a really ugly rabbit Pokemon. The big ear hands have grown to the point of like unyieldy and odd, and the big belly and 5 o'clock shadow are hilariously on point, but do not look any better on a rabbit than they do a person. You guys voted this thing into the dirt, and while I do get it, I think it's better than that, so I'll go with 2.5 stars, which actually does give Diggersby a pretty decent 3.25 star final score, at least for an early route Pokemon. Oh, and click one of these videos to see how the others fared. For how amazing this evolution line is, Fletchling itself is surprisingly forgettable. We're rating them all, and even in battle, it's the only one of the 3 who is normal flying instead of fire flying. Its stats are decent enough though. It's going to outspeed most things in the early game, and base 50 attack is plenty to make decent use of stab pecs. Even if quick attack and agility are redundant, Fletchling is pretty solid. 3.5 stars in battle prowess. Now for availability, it is of course the regional early route bird in Kalos. However, it isn't found until Akala Island in Alola, but thankfully it just barely still averages 5 stars. Talonflame's perfect 5 overall is officially a possibility. As for concept though, well, it's a tiny Robin Pokemon. That's it. Sorry, were you expecting more? 2 stars. Its design is also sadly kind of underwhelming. It seems almost like a rough draft, like it's incomplete. Its feet and beak look very much so just drawn on. Even its eyes don't really have any depth or life to them at all. Its tail is cool though, looking like one giant feather instead, and the eye looking like a whole bird's head on its own is kind of funny, but I don't know if that was intentional. What do you guys think of this birdie?
I'd name it Bingo.
You name it Bingo?
And Ock and Bingo.
And Socks and Bingo. How many stars out of 5? Would you give it 1 star, 2, 3, 4, or 5? 5! 5! You guys are crazy.
Like a birdie.
Like a birdie. You're right. You guys are voting this around 3 to 4 stars, and I think that might even be a tad generous, but I'll go with 3 stars, which will land Fletchling's final score at 3.375 stars overall. Fletchinder is a huge step up from Fletchling and a perfect bridge to Talonflame. We're rating them all, and that is also fairly true in battle with its base 84 speed and 73 attack, which at least in the early game is amazing, and it doesn't have too long to go before it evolves, so it scales pretty well. Fire Flying is also famously an okay type combo, but it is fun offensively. And Fletchinder's move pool is, okay, wow, I could have sworn this thing got Flame Charge earlier, but alright, Peck, Ember, and Roost it is, I guess. You get the Aerial Ace and Flame Charge TMs at some point before evolving, sure, but this is pretty underwhelming. 3 stars. It will of course get the same 5 stars in availability as Fletchling though, and in concept, oof, I was really hoping to see something more upon evolution. Sure, it's a literal spin on the actual bird, the Flame Robin, by being a fire type Robin. Yikes, man, maybe Talonflame won't be getting that perfect 5 stars if it doesn't step it up. 2.5 stars in concept. I do like Fletchinder's design though, the much sharper look in general with the eye pattern, head feathers, and wings to help show that it has become a formidable predator upon evolution, and the tail feathers that I liked on Fletchling have grown and still look good. It's still not an amazing bird Pokemon design yet, but it's pretty solid and bridges the gap in its evolution line well. 3.5 stars in design. So that roasts Fletchender's final score to a nice 3.5 stars overall. Talonflame has been one of the most common predictions for our next perfect 5-star Pokemon, but can it do it? We haven't had one since Gen 4, and it's gonna be close. We're rating them all, and this is immediately going to get dicey, because I know all of you are screaming Gale Wings and ready to type a huge paragraph, but we have not counted hidden abilities in this entire series, and honestly, even if we did, Gale Wings isn't very good outside of competitive play anyway. Talonflame has base 126 speed. There are very few things that will outspeed it anyway, though its other stats do leave a lot to be desired. Between 71 and 84 for all of its attacks and defense stats is not great, guys. However, it does make up for that with its move pool. Roost, Flame Charge, Acrobatics, and Tailwind by Level Up, Brave Bird and Flare Blitz from the Reminder, then TMs like Flamethrower for damage, and great support through Will-O-Wisp, U-Turn, and even Swords Dance. Its stats really don't tell the full story here. Talonflame is pretty amazing in spite of them. I think it just barely manages to get to 5 stars in battle prowess. And availability, thanks to Fletchling being available very early in Kalos and early enough in Alola to still average up to 5 stars, along with its evolution levels not being stupid, it will also get 5 stars in availability. But has it grown enough from its pre-evolution shockingly disappointing concepts? Well, it seems to be based on a few birds, but mostly the peregrine falcon, which I believe is the fastest aerial animal in the world, shown by its dex entries explaining its 300-mile-per-hour hunting tactics, as well as the phenomenon of some real-world birds starting actual fires to fish out prey from the brush, as well as pretty clear ties to the mythological firebirds, with Talonflame's feathers being both fireproof themselves as well as scattering embers in flight. I may be reaching due to bias here, let me know what you think, but I think it again barely manages to get 5 stars. Only one category remains: can Talonflame do it? For starters, I think it's safe to say that this thing is easily among the fan favorites for regional birds, and even among Kalos Pokemon as a whole. Its shape and patterns have now fully evolved into the long, sharp head crest, along with the black patterns along its eyes and flame patterns on its wings and body, as well as the smoky ember pattern on its lower half. Its now yellow sharp talons also tie in well with its new yellow pattern on its tail feathers that are almost reminiscent of an arrow, like in its Japanese name. I haven't actually seen the polls yet, but I'm sure you guys are with me that this is an amazing fire-type bird Pokemon design. 5 stars. Which means that Talonflame has risen from the ashes of the 5-star list Johto and Unova and become Kalos' first perfect 5-star Pokemon. And click one of these 2 videos to see how the other regional birds have done. The Rated 'Em All community giveth, and the Rated 'Em All community taketh away. Talonflame's perfect 5 stars has been revoked by some actual fair points, if we're being honest. I knew it was going to be close. Anyway, while you're here, let's fly through Scatterbug's episode. Its stats are awful as you would expect them to be, but thankfully it does evolve at level 9, so you don't have to use it for long. And hey, at least it can Stun, Spore, and Tackle. That's shockingly not useless at all for the duration you'll use it. 2.5 stars in battle prowess. But it is of course available right away in Kalos, so that gets 5 stars in availability. Concept, however, has been these regional bugs' downfall, and for Scatterbug, on one hand, it is pretty clearly just a caterpillar, but its dex entries explaining how it eats different poisonous plants that turn into its own poisonous powder to scatter and defend itself is pretty cool, I guess. 1.5 stars. But boy oh boy, this design is rough to look at. Firstly, the black and white color scheme with the mute brown accents isn't doing it any favors at all, and neither is, well, its face. That's rough, buddy. But the little bib-like collar, tiny little baby hair standing up, and singular buck tooth do portray baby or first stage well. You guys voted this around 3 stars, but I think that's very generous. 2 stars. So that does give Scatterbug the final score of 2.875 stars overall, and here's a first look at the bottom 5 that will surely change. Guys, Spupa exists! It's okay, I know it's easy to forget. We're rating them all, and hey, in battle, it's also really bad. Sure, it's physically bulky, and you can get some free stun spores off at most of the time, but that's all it's doing. Thankfully, you only have to use it for 3 levels, but still, that can't get more than 1.5 stars in battle prowess. Availability, though, will of course stay the same as Scatterbug's 5 stars, and conceptually, it has evolved from the caterpillar into a pupa cocoon chrysalis thing. Maybe if there was even a little bit of an explanation for the confetti pixel thing things it would be higher, but I don't see any evidence of that, so 1 star. Now, said pixel things, as much as they seem random conceptually, visually they are a nice precursor to the many different Vivian forms. But outside of that, it's barely even a cocoon stage. Scatterbug just covered itself in hairs as a protective layer, which I guess is more creative than just adding another actual cocoon Pokemon. The polls have this around 3 stars, and while I don't think it's a bad design, it's definitely not above average. 2.5 stars, which will give Speepa the final score of 2.5 stars overall. I wonder how long this will stay as the lowest score in Kalos. What's your favorite Vivian pattern? My top 3 are Ocean, Monsoon, and Pokeball. We're rating them all, and how is it in battle though? I don't think I've ever actually tried to use it, but it does have basically 90 speed and special attack along with decent HP. I mean, that's not nothing. Bug Flying is a bad type though, of course, but its move pool is actually really good. The screens and powders for support, Gust, Struggle Bug, and Psybeam early on, Draining Kiss, Bug Buzz, Hurricane, and Quiver Dance later on, and some incredible TMs full of setup and coverage. Its defenses are obviously still a huge liability, but it's shockingly decent otherwise. 3 stars in battle prowess, and that might even be a tad low. Its availability, however, will of course be 5 stars since you can not only get Scatterbug, but even Vivian itself before the first gym. It is a bit more interesting than just a butterfly though conceptually, as it is based on the swallowtail variants of butterflies, which are known for having over 14 different forms varying by location. Even a step further is the fact that said patterns on Vivian seem to be based on pixel art or modern art as a whole, with the actual modern form being pretty directly based on this specific Dutch art movement. Shockingly interesting for an early route regional bug, I won't lie, but still not amazing in the bigger picture. I'm stuck on either 3.5 or 4, but I'll go with 4 stars for concept. But this is another example when concept and design can be very blurred though, as the main talking point here is of course the patterns themselves. And while some do look better than others, honestly, all of them look really good in their own right. The base meadow pattern is pretty, but might actually be the least interesting, and the compound butterfly eyes furthering the pixel art idea is also well done. The body of Vivian itself isn't all that interesting or eye-catching, but I think that's kind of the point. The wings are supposed to be the centerpiece. You guys voted this around 4 stars, and I very surprisingly agree with you after giving it its time in the spotlight. 4 stars. So that actually gives Vivian a solid 4 stars overall, pretty high among final stage regional bugs. And click one of these videos to see how the other regional bugs fared. Why does no one count Litleo in the early route normal type conversation? It's a normal type, a mammal, and it's available before the first gym. Shoot, it's even a 2-stage evolution line, unlike Lillipup, which everyone counts. We're rating them all, and rant aside, how does it fare in battle? Well, along with its normal type, it is also a fire type, which sure, gives it a few more weaknesses, but also gives it more resistances and much better offense. And I'm sorry, it has 7 decent special attack and speed, along with decent other stats otherwise for a Pokemon available on like the second route. That's amazing. And with early Ember, Headbutt, and Workup, this thing is a genuine monster in the early game, but you do have to wait until level 35 to evolve it, where it obviously drops off pretty hard. 3.5 stars in battle prowess. But as I said, you can catch this thing at level 5 before the first gym in Kalos, so yeah, that's 5 stars in availability. Oh yeah, and I did update Vivian's battle prowess to 3.5, thanks for the input. Okay, how about concept? Sadly, it's pretty much a literal lion cub with some fire type flavor text. I guess that's 2 stars. See, it fits right in with Pet Boring Group, but I at least think that its design is adorable. Sure, it's simple, but most normal types are, and if done right, simplicity is not a bad thing. The little red mohawk tuft of fur, which I'm pretty sure glows when it attacks, is a really nice detail to show that it's a fire type on an otherwise pretty plain but adorable little lion cub. The polls came in at 3 stars, but I feel like 3.5 is more fair here, so Litleo does at least get a decent 3.5 stars overall. Pyroar is such an underrated and underappreciated Pokemon. We're rating them all, and even in battle, its normal fire typing is unique and pretty strong, but its 106 speed and 109 attack is really good, especially for a Pokemon that is so easily available. Rivalry isn't the best ability for sure, but you can work around it, and its move pool is pretty awesome. Work Up, Flamethrower, Hyper Voice, and Hyper Beam by level up, great TMs like Sunny Day, Solar Beam, Will-O-Wisp, Snarl, and Dark Pulse. Though to be fair, it isn't the bulkiest of course, so it may not be your best Pokemon, but it's still very good. 4 stars in battle prowess. And you could argue an availability penalty since you do have to raise your little Litleo like 30 levels to evolve it, but since you do get Litleo basically at the start of the game and it's very strong for at least that first chunk, I think it's fine to stay 5 stars. Conceptually, it at least does grow a little bit from Litleo's very simple and literal lion cub. Now it adds on some inspiration from heraldic coats of arms style lions, and of course the shape and style of its mane coming from Japanese symbols for fire. Still not amazing of course, but fairly cool. 3 stars. Design wise though, the aforementioned exclamation symbol for fire not only fits perfectly as a lion's mane, but also really helps sell the fact that it's a fire type without just simply adding fire. And I suppose I could give scores to the male and female separately, but I don't think that's really necessary here, as like real lions, they look extremely similar outside of that main difference. And sure, this may be my seldomly used channel mascot, but I think they both look really awesome, especially the tails and legs that I feel like are a simple but really cool detail. Having the lighter fur overlap onto the dark adds so much depth to the design. You guys voted it around 4 stars, but I think it deserves 4.5. So that will end up giving Pyroar a solid 4.125 stars overall. I really wish Mega Pyroar just didn't exist. We're rating a Molland, alright, at least in battle it is of course an improvement, but not like massively. It adds 20 or so into all of its stats other than HP, which, alright, sure, 120s in special attack and speed is great, and alright, Earth Power, Flamethrower, and Hyper Voice by level up is pretty nasty, especially when paired with its other TMs like Solar Beam, Will-O-Wisp, and Dark Pulse. It's probably still a 5 in battle prowess, but not like overwhelmingly like most Megas. Oh, and the Megastone is only available after beating the last mission in ZA. Gotta love that. 1 star. Okay, so what does it add conceptually? Well, apparently it just changes the symbol in its main from fire to flame. Seriously? I think I'm actually going to take a half a star away for that, because like that's all we got. 2.5 stars. And I have heard a lot of people say that Mega Pyroar is not only one of the worst designed Megas in Legends EA, but one of the worst Megas overall. And I don't know if I would quite go that far, but yeah, that's fair. It's definitely in that conversation. But a lot of people do use the "it's supposed to be silly" argument, but I don't think that lands here at all. Like giving a silly or joke style Pokemon a silly or joke style evolution or Mega is fine. I still don't like it, but it makes sense. We should not, however, be giving silly, dumb evolutions or Megas to otherwise cool Pokemon. Not only is this Mega design boring, but it also just looks terrible. I'll stop ranting now, as you guys seem to agree with me by voting this thing I think the lowest a Mega has ever gone on design, so I'll go with you guys and balance the 2 polls for a 2-star design, which actually gives Mega Pyroar a 2.625 star final score, the worst Mega score in the series thus far.
Flabébé was the perfect introduction to the fairy type for most of us in our first Kalos playthrough. We're rating them all, and in battle it's okay. Its main issue is its low speed. Its special attack and defense are really good and do help make up for that, but since it has Fairy Wind as its only move that it's really going to use, that's not good. Against special attackers, it's pretty solid, but the early game is filled with physical opponents, so it's really not great. 2 stars in battle prowess. On the plus side though, it is available basically right away in both Kalos and Alola, so it will get 5 stars in availability. And I gotta say, its concept is surprisingly really cool. It's pretty obviously based on fairies, but more specifically nymphs, and even more specifically Chloris, a nymph associated with spring and flowers in Greek mythology. Also, it very clearly draws inspiration from pollinators or even just pollination in general, as we'll get into in design, but is this a 5-star concept? I think it is, though it should still be very clearly part grass type. But anyway, design, both of its evolutions I've always thought were pretty cool and interesting Pokemon, but Flabébé itself is pretty easy to forget. However, its details are amazing. Firstly, the little crown made of pollen is a great touch, and the fact that it's holding on to the flower's stigma pushes the pollination idea even further. But something that I'm just now noticing is that even Flabébé itself is disguised as its own little flower, stem and all. This is all not even mentioning its different colors found in different locations. You guys have this one around 3 stars, but I would put it a bit higher, so we'll meet in the middle at 3.5. So that will plant Flabébé at the final score of 3.875 stars overall. Why is Floette the one in this line to get all of the attention when Florges is right there? We're rating them all, and well, at least in battle, Floette is not great. Sure, base 98 special defense and 75 special attack is great at level 19, but its 52 speed and even lower defense is a problem. Thankfully, you can get the Shiny Stone to evolve really early, especially with super training, but its move pool is really bad. Fairy Wind early, Wish for recovery, and Magical Leaf for coverage, sure, but that's it. It's just disappointing to use for sure. 2.5 stars in battle prowess. But thankfully, it is available before the second gym in both Kalos and Alola, so it gets 5 stars in availability. And as we went over with Flabébé, its concept was shockingly good. It seems to be inspired by Chloris, a nymph associated with spring and flowers in Greek mythology, or even just fairies and nymphs more broadly, while also clearly drawing inspirations from pollination and pollinators. Floette is all of those things, but now it even uses its flower as a parasail, furthering the stereotypical fairy idea, kinda like Mary Poppins. 5 stars. And design-wise, is it crazy to say that Floette is the best in the line? I think that it has by far the most balanced design, with a green stem and body and stamen maybe for eyebrows and yellow pollen
Lollipop hair ties, and the colored flower all contrasting really well against its white body. Floette seems to be the most fairy looking of the three, while the other two seem to be more plant dominated even though they aren't grass types. You guys voted this at 4 stars, and I might even think that's a tad low, but I'll go with 4 stars. Which actually means Floette gets 4.125 stars overall and a spot on the first Kalos top 5 we've shown. You can actually get Eternal Flower Floette in Legend ZA, so we can count it here now on Rate 'em All. But how will it fare? For starters, it's great in battle, arguably even better than Florges. 125-ish in both special attack and defense is really good, and 92 speed is solid. So with it learning things like Draining Kiss, Wish, and Synthesis for staying power, then Moonblast, Energy Ball, and Light of Ruin or Solar Beam for damage, along with great TMs like Calm Mind, Giga Drain, and Psychic, and that's pretty awesome. If it had Leech Seed, I'd probably give it 5 stars here, but I think 4.5 is fair. Availability, however, unlike the rest of these little fairies, the only place you can get this specific Flabebe is not only in the post-game of Legends ZA, but at the very end of the post-game, half a star at best in availability. Though Floette did get 5 stars in concept with its environmental and mythological ties, as we've went over twice now, and Eternal Floette of course adds on to that with all of its in-game lore, which possibly ties into Resurrection Lilies, another 5 stars. Design-wise, I think this is easily the best looking Pokemon in its line. It still of course has all of the positives that I went over with regular Floettes, like how it's the most balanced design-wise out of the group, and of course it nails the concept, and Eternal changes that flower into a much edgier and darker flower in fitting with lore surrounding death and resurrection. Also, its body is the French colors for Kalos now. Is it crazy to say that this is a 5-star design? Maybe, but we're gonna go with it. So that will give Eternal Flower Floette 3.75 stars overall. Most of the new ZA Megas went more so for goofy or gimmick than the old school rule of cool, and Floette is a glaring example of that. We're rating them all, and firstly, in battle it is pretty clearly amazing. 155 special attack, 148 special defense, and 102 speed is amazing. Even 87 in defense isn't terrible. And it of course still has the great move pool we talked about with Eternal Flower, full of recovery and damage by level up, and setup and coverage with TMs. Easily 5 stars in battle prowess. Unfortunately for availability, this is like the absolute last thing you could possibly get in Legends EA if I'm not mistaken, so I don't see how that's more than half a star there. Concept Floette got 5 stars as we've went over thrice now, but what about its Mega? Well, it doesn't actually Mega Evolve, its Flower does, which normally I would hate, but considering its ties to the whole Eternal Flower ultimate weapon stuff in the story of Kalos, it gets a pass and is a pretty awesome idea in general. 5 stars. However, even if it's a cool idea, that doesn't mean that it looks good, and I don't think it does. The Flower now vaguely looks like the ultimate weapon, maybe? And sure, it looks pretty cool, I suppose, and I get that the Floette itself didn't actually Mega Evolve, but they could have changed something with it. This is far too gimmicky for my liking and doesn't even look that good in the face of it. You guys had this around 3 stars, and I'm with you, I suppose. 3 stars. So that does land Mega Floette 3.375 stars overall, just missing the ZA Mega bottom 5. It seems kind of silly having Florges even be a thing when Floette already has 2 other forms, especially since it's genuinely overshadowed by them. We're rating them all, and thankfully in battle, especially in a Kalos playthrough, that is not accurate. Mostly due to availability, but still, Florges is pretty awesome to use. It's an absolute tank, especially with 154 special defense and 112 special attack, though its other stats are not great. It also has a solid move pool with some strong damaging moves and setup as well as recovery. This is kind of the Golem conundrum of if you mind your matchups and use it right, it's amazing, but if you don't, it can be a problem. I'll go with 4 stars, but I could see 4.5. And as I said before, its availability is its strong suit. You could get Flabebe before the second gym in Kalos and Alola, and the Shiny Stone is mid-game at worst, or even earlier with either Super Training or Pokepelago. So there is no reason to drop this from 5 stars. And conceptually, Florges is pretty clearly based on fairies or nymphs, but more particularly Chloris, a forest nymph associated with spring and flowers in Greek mythology. And this whole line also had a lot of ties to pollination and such, Florges being the final result of that. But it also has some ties to the 18th century nobles and fitting with the whole French Kalos region. 5 stars. Design-wise, however, as I mentioned in the Floette videos, I don't think that it is as good as its pre-evolution. Floette was very clearly a fairy, using the flower as like a magical Mary Poppins umbrella parasol thing. But Florges seems more so plant than fairy, even though it's not actually a grass type. Not to say that Florges looks bad, it doesn't at all. The flower resembling the 18th century poof hairstyle is a nice touch and looks good, especially with the multiple colored flower thing. As a whole, this is still a very good looking fancy flower fairy design. I would give it about a 4, but you guys gave it a 5, so we'll meet in the middle at 4.5 for design, which will actually plant Florges at 4.625 stars overall and high up up on the Kalos Top 5.
Skiddo and Gogoat fall into that category of Pokemon that I absolutely never use but still love for some reason. We're rating them all, and for battle prowess, my main issue with it is its ability Sap Sipper, which on something that doesn't already exist, grass, would be awesome. But Skiddo is a pure grass type. Its stats are also okay. Decent HP and attack stats, but its defenses and speed leave a lot to be desired, especially since it doesn't evolve until level 32. Its moves are good though, the ever amazing Leech Seed, Razor Leaf, Synthesis, Bulldoze, and even Seed Bomb. It's a pretty decent 3-star Pokemon. Yet funnily enough for availability, you can get it before the second gym in Kalos and then never again until Paldea, which we aren't counting yet. But we also don't count the games that it's not in against it, so that's a full 5 stars in availability. And its concept is shockingly really good actually. I was fully expecting to say it's a goat that has some grass on it, 2 stars. But no, as you see in game, it can of course be ridden like a bike or something, and even has some mythological ties to some half-goat gods of nature, or even the Yule goat figurines, 4 stars. It's also just a pretty cute Pokemon. I like its evolution much better, but this is a pretty decent design. I like how the horns are framed like they're handles for said riders, and the grassy pelt both fits perfectly and helps portray its grass type, while its orange hooves give its color scheme some pop. I was thinking 3.5, but you guys have it around a 4, so sure, let's go with 4 stars, which does round out Skiddo's final score to an even 4 stars overall. Gogoat is so cool and pretty darn strong, but it never gets any love. We're rating them all, and in battle it has the second highest HP stat in Kalos behind Gudra, I'm pretty sure, while still having 100-ish in both attacks and solid special defense. But it is slow and physically frail, along with being a pure grass type while wasting the Sap Sipper ability is unfortunate. Its move pool is pretty great though. Leech Seed, Bulldoze, Bulk Up, and Horn Leech by level up alone is incredible, but it also gets some really strong TMs as well. But again, its speed and defense do hold it back pretty considerably. I'm on the fence of around a 4 or 4.5 for battle prowess, but I think it's a 4. For availability, however, as we explained with Gogoat, we only count games that it's actually in against it, of which it's available before the second gym, so 5 stars. It also got a surprising 4 stars in concept, since not only is it very clearly based on some sort of goat or antelope species, it also has some very clear like bike or motorcycle ideas, with it being able to be ridden and the handlebar style horns. However, it also has some mythological and cultural ties, like the nature goat god creatures Pan or Faunus, as well as the Yule goat figurines. Pretty cool, but how about design? Well, I think this is a perfect example of the whole just because it's simple doesn't mean it's bad idea. Simplicity in design by itself is not the issue. It's when it's done poorly and boringly that's the problem. Yes, this is most simply put a grassy goat, but its color scheme is really pleasing and blends well while still feeling true to the idea. The grassy coat does a good job showing its bulkiness, and its eyes and horns do a great job of showing that it is not to be trifled with. I personally love this design. I think its simplicity done very well, and almost like a callback as to why the much more simple Gen 1 designs were so loved, which it seems you all agree with as you voted it around 4 or 4.5, so I'll go with 4.5 stars in design. So that actually plants Gogoat with not only a 4.375 star final score, but a spot in the Kalos Top 5 for now. And click one of these 2 videos if you want to see how some of the other Kalos Pokemon have done.
Wait, Pancham is this early into the Kalos decks? Wow. We're running them all, and honestly, this little fighting type panda is kind of crazy in battle, especially considering how early you can get it in Kalos and Galar. Having 82 attack along with decent physical bulk is very strong on its own, not to mention the fact that its ability Iron Fist boosts its moves like Comet Punch, that's it? Okay. Well still, Karate Chop, Work Up, and Slash are very good early on with those stats. Unfortunately, by the time it evolves at level 32, it is going to be far outclassed, which will keep its battle prowess down at like 3.5 stars. And as I said, you can get it really early in both Kalos and Galar, but it is locked until later in Alola, so that will average its availability down to 4.5 stars. Yet conceptually, this is definitely a baby panda Pokemon. I mean, I guess it attempts to look tough and intimidating, trying to imitate Pangoro, which is pretty cute, but yeah, that's a 2-star concept. But regardless of whether or not that's an exciting or interesting concept, it does lead to a really cute design. A tiny little baby panda toddler trying to act all tough, imitating their fathers by chewing on a tiny leaf and glaring. Maybe I'm just a sucker for that since I have a 3-year-old son of my own, but this one has really grown on me recently. But even you guys voted it around 4 stars, and that's good with me. 4 stars in design, which musters up Pancham a decent 3.5 stars overall. I've never used a Pangoro, but its potential in battle is daunting. We're rating them all, and firstly, Fighting Dark is a fun combo offensively and not bad defensively. But its main selling points are of course its ability Iron Fist, which boosts punching moves paired with its whopping 124 base attack. But its lack of speed and bulk outside of HP is rough. Now its move pool by level up is really solid on its own with Body Slam, Crunch, Hammer Arm, and even Parting Shot. But what really sells it is its TMs, most specifically Bulk Up to solve said previous issues, but also plenty of really strong offensive options and coverage. I do think that 4 stars is fair due to its downsides, but they are very easily fixable, so I don't know, you tell me. Its availability starts at Pancham's great 4.5 stars. However, in Kalos and Galar, you have to drag that really frail little Pancham all the way to level 32. So I do think that deserves a slight penalty to its score in those regions specifically, and therefore brings its new average to 4 stars. And while Pancham was very simply a baby panda Pokemon trying to act tough, Pangoro is the giant panda Pokemon who is tough. Maybe drawing inspiration from Japanese juvenile delinquent leaders, which I guess gives it something, 3 stars. But design-wise, I honestly like Pancham a lot better. I think the little guy pretending to be tough, imitating its role model, but just ending up being cute instead, is way more of an appealing design than the big tough guy. It doesn't get bad by any means though, don't get me wrong, I just wouldn't put it anywhere near the 5 stars that you all voted it at. It's a cool, aggressive giant panda Pokemon, it's just not very interesting or memorable of a design. I would put it quite a bit lower, but I'll meet in the middle at 4 stars, so that will give Pangoro the final score of 3.75 stars overall. And if you liked this one, you probably don't want to miss these other Kalos Pokemon and see how they fared as well.
Furfrou is insanely broken in the early game, and I really didn't think that this was a hot take, but apparently thinking that base Furfrou looks decent and all of its other forms look awful is like fighting words. We're rating them all, and before we get to that, like I said, this thing is insanely strong for the early game. In both regions it's in, you can get it as low as like level 7, and it not only has great stats like 80 attack, 90 special defense, and 102 speed, but it also has Fur Coat, which halves physical damage. Even with just like Headbutt and Bite, this thing will unironically be the strongest Pokemon in your party until you get some later evolutions. We do judge it through endgame, however, where it does fall off a bit, but honestly it's still absolutely viable with Charm, Sucker Punch, Cotton Guard, and some really solid TMs. This seems crazy, but I think that this is 4.5 stars in battle prowess, especially considering its early game dominance. So its availability score shouldn't be surprising either, since it is available before the first or second gym in both of the regions that it's in. That's 5 stars. Is this forgettable dog really gonna get into the top 5? I don't know, concept and design will be a hurdle for sure, as this thing is of course quite literally just a fancy poodle Pokemon, including this thing's whole gimmick with all of its different forms found in different parts of the world, which is mildly interesting at best, 2.5 stars. For design, however, my unexpectedly hot take is that the base form is by far the best looking out of them all, with a good shiny too. I suppose those first 3 forms without a hat look okay. I kind of like the star one, but the ones with the hats look really stupid. In general, it's a decent looking dog Pokemon that does look like a formidable opponent until you give it a dumb haircut, kind of like real poodles who look way better normal. You guys voted it at 3 stars, and while I'd probably go with 2.5, I suppose 3 stars is fine, which will sadly shave down its final score to 3.75 stars overall.
Little Esper is a surprisingly decent little psychic type Pokemon. We're rating them all, and considering that you can get this thing at like level 11, its base 60 or so in HP, speed, and both special stats is good, especially when you consider the fact that it gets Side Beam at level 17 and even Fake Out for utility. It's going to be a pretty decently solid psychic type until it evolves level 25. It's not amazing or anything, but it's a solid 3.5 stars in battle prowess. And since you can get it before the second gym in both Kalos and Galar, that's 5 stars in availability. And Esper, or more specifically Meowstic, seems to be pretty directly based on the Nekomata, which are yokai from Japanese legend of a cat that grows old until its tail splits and it gains supernatural powers. Pretty cool starting point for Esper for sure, 4 stars. And design-wise, it's definitely a creepy little guy. In the anime, it's actually pretty cute most of the time. But yeah, in game, these sprites went full into the empty soulless eyes staring through you idea, which works for this type of Pokemon. It looks good. The polls were very different on the 2 platforms, but I think the 3.5 fits just fine, which actually grants Esper a surprising 4 stars overall. Meowstic is one of those Pokemon that absolutely could have used an evolution, or a Mega, I suppose. We're rating them all, and in battle, it's definitely decent. 104 speed and around 80 in its defenses and special attack. It's solid for sure, and pure psychic typing is good. Though by its move pool, you can really tell this thing was made for competitive doubles, with moves like Helping Hand, Fake Out, and Trick Room by TM, etc. Even more so by both the male and female's hidden abilities, Prankster and Competitive. Too bad this is for playthroughs, so basically everything I just mentioned is useless outside of Fake Out. It still gets good moves like Psyshock, Charm, and Psychic, along with some solid TMs for coverage and setup. This is not a bad Pokemon by any means, but for a standard playthrough or even a Nuzlocke, it's just fairly good, not much more.
3.5 stars in battle prowess. But since Esper is available before the second gym in both regions it's in, and its evolution level is only 25, this will also get 5 stars in availability. And Meowstic especially is very clearly based on the Nekomata, a yokai of a domesticated cat that lives many years until its tail splits and it gains supernatural powers. Some even stand on 2 legs and wear handkerchiefs on their head. But they also take it a step further with a third eye-like patterns under its ears, further pushing its psychic typing, 5 stars. And I actually really like both of its designs. I'm seeing the running trend of Kalos Pokemon throwing back to much simpler times when Pokemon were mostly just magical animals, and I personally love that design philosophy. It's why the original 151 were so immediately popular. So yes, the simple split-tailed, contrasting colored psychic cat Pokemon is really cool in my opinion. It perfectly portrays the concept and looks really good in the process. The polls have it as like a high 4-ish, and I think that's good. It's great, but not quite top tier. But that still gives it a 4.375 star final score and a spot in the Kalos top 5. Mega Meowstic is actually a really bright spot in an otherwise very disappointing group of new Megas. We're rating them all, and in battle it is an absolute monster, like most Megas, but this time they did the absolute right thing stats-wise and dumped 60 extra points into special attack, then the other 40 into special defense and speed, turning it into a very strong, very fast special attacker who has respectable bulk. Its move pool by level up is decent, like with Charm, Psyshock, and Psychic, but it also has great TMs like Calm Mind and Charge Beam for setup and plenty of offensive coverage. I don't see any reason this shouldn't be 5 stars in battle prowess. But just like every other DLC Mega, it gets absolutely dismantled by its availability, which is half a star. However, concept as we explained with regular Meowstic is awesome. It's based on a supernaturally powered split-tail cat yokai with the whole magical third eye thing in its ears. Its Mega even adds on to it with the whole idea of genetic chimerism by splitting the 2 different looking designs down the middle, another 5 stars. And said splitting down the middle, as I just mentioned, is not only really cool as an idea to bring these 2 different looking designs together, but it also looks fantastic. Both of them already had the blues and whites, but mixing the 2 looks really good, even down to the hair tufts on its head and neck being blended with the 2, and the eyes being opposite in color. This is genuinely one of my favorite new Mega designs, even though I've never actually used Meowstic. The polls have it at 5 stars, and I absolutely agree. So that will give Mega Meowstic the final score of 3.875 stars overall.
Honedge, Doublade, and Aegislash are easily one of the best overall evolution lines in Kalos, and maybe even more broadly, but how will they fare as we rate them all? Well, to start, they are all incredible in battle, even little Honedge. Steel Ghost is an incredible typing. Even after they remove Steel's resistances to Ghost and Dark in Gen 6, it still has 3 immunities and 9 resistances. Its stats are also really good, especially for how early you can get it in Kalos. 80 base attack and 100 base defense with that typing just purely outclasses everything you'll face. Its level up move pool is also really good, but you do of course need to be careful with its low speed and special defense, especially the closer that it gets to its pretty high evolution level. But as long as you mind your matchups, this is easily a 4 in battle prowess. But as I alluded to, for availability, you can get it before the second gym in Kalos, but in Galar it isn't found until Hammerlock Hills. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but you can still technically catch this before the third gym, which actually still averages its availability to 5 stars. This whole line's concept, however, is absolutely incredible. On its face, ooh, it's a ghost sword, yeah, cool. But firstly, magical swords are a very popular trope in fantasy, but more importantly, it has ties to all sorts of cultural beliefs and mythology. There was the idea that samurai's swords possessed its wielder's soul, and even more so with the trend of inanimate objects becoming alive after many years in Japanese culture. But wait, there's more. The fact that Honedge can drain the wielder's life force, it could also be based on Tyrfing, a cursed sword in Norse mythology. Absolutely 5 stars. And for design, while you could do the whole "it's just a sword" thing, and that's really almost dishonest here, yes, it is a sword, but it is also a unique, dynamic, and detailed design. First, while it's sheathed, it almost forms like a face with the teeth and everything, along with the sheath itself having the ornate triquerta, I believe is how you say it, seen all throughout history. But then when drawn from said sheath, you see that the blue tassel is actually a prehensile-like hand or monkey's tail, while revealing the blade itself and its ghostly eye. Also, its shiny being a blood-soaked blade is a great touch. The polls had this around the 4, but I don't see how you could make a first stage ghost sword any better. Incredible design, 5 stars. Which will bestow Honedge the final score of 4.75 stars overall and the spot high up on the Kalos top 5. I think Doublade might actually have a better design than Aegislash. It's a great middle stage evolution. We're rating them all, and like Honedge, its Ghost Steel typing is insane defensively with 3 immunities and 9 resistances, but it also has base 100 attack and 150 defense? Sure, it's slow and you have to avoid special attackers, but this is just the Golem conundrum all over again. Its move pool is also fantastic. 3 different double stat setup moves, Shadow Sneak to get around at slow speed, Night Slash, Iron Head, and Sacred Sword for damage, as well as Brick Break, Shadow Claw, and Gyro Ball TMs for earlier in the game. There's also the thing that you could technically evolve it into Aegislash immediately, so it's kind of hard to judge in terms of battle prowess, but I think everything that I just said equals out to a still very strong 4.5 stars in battle prowess. Now, availability, I could see people arguing that its level 35 evolution should constitute a penalty. However, unlike the Slowpokes and Unova Pokemon of the world, I think Honedge's like 80 and 100 stats is still perfectly viable throughout that whole journey, so I think it should stay 5 stars. Honedge did also get 5 stars in concept for being the shockingly deep take on a ghost sword, drawing inspiration from fantasy tropes, Japanese culture more broadly, samurai beliefs more specifically, as well as Norse mythology of cursed swords. Incredible concept, stays 5 stars. And as I said at the start, I may actually prefer Doublade's design over Aegislash. They're both amazing, don't get me wrong, but the pinks contrast really nicely onto the gold and bronze of the hilts and sheath, especially the piercing little ghost eyes on the really uniquely shaped crossguards, not to mention the little face that it appears to make with the sword shining through as almost teeth when sheathed. But when it draws said swords is when it really all comes together. The wall mount looking thing that remains behind the crossed sword almost gives it a sense of something to be protected, as well as, well, let's be honest, swords are cool, and dual wielding swords are even cooler. Incredible shiny, incredible design. You guys had it around a 4.5, but I think that this is absolutely a 5-star design, granting Doublade the honor of a 4.875 star final score, as well as the top spot on the Kalos Top 5. Aegislash is the peak and perfect conclusion to what I consider one of the most complete and best overall evolution lines in Pokemon, but can fulfill the prophecy of being Kalos' first perfect 5-star Pokemon. We're rating them all, and in battle at least, I think it absolutely can. Its main draw and whole gimmick revolves around its unique ability, Stance Change, which changes its form from Blade, which has 150 in both attacks in Gen 6, to Shield, which flips those 150s to its defenses after using its unique move, King's Shield, which not only changes its form and protects itself from damage on that turn, but it also lowers the attack of anyone who hits it. You then pair that with its otherwise incredible move pool with 3 different double stat boost moves, then Shadow Sneak for priority, Night Slash, Iron Head, and Sacred Sword for damage, as well as TMs like Shadow Claw, Shadow Ball, and Flash Cannon. Oh yeah, and the fact that Ghost Steel typing has 3 immunities and 9 resistances, even after Steel got nerfed, and then they still felt the need to nerf this Pokemon stat specifically in Gen 8. This is very, very clearly 5 stars in battle prowess. Availability, however, is its biggest question. Honedge and Doublade got 5 stars for being found really early in Kalos and early enough in Galar to average out. But the thing with Aegislash is the fact that you can get it immediately after evolving Doublade with the Dusk Stone, since it is available at that point in the game in each of those regions. So with the precedent of the Friendship Evolution boost or the Moonstone boost back in Kanto, this could even be argued as a boost in its score, so we're obviously not going to drop it down, and it stays 5 stars. And concept, as I've gone over twice now, is already fantastic. Sure, it's just a ghost sword, but with much deeper inspiration from all over the world. Typical Western fantasy tropes, Japanese culture more broadly, as well as Norse mythology and samurai beliefs more specifically. Then you even add on the story that its dex entries tell. It can detect the innate qualities of leadership, so then it recognizes those who are destined to become king, then accompanies them and manipulates people and Pokemon to build a kingdom of its liking. Then after reigning over this land with said king, it eventually drains him of his life, making the kingdom fall. Easily a 5-star concept. Though design, as I said in the Doublade video, I actually really prefer it over Aegislash. I just think the dual cross swords with the pink or even blue from Honedge contrasting against the bronze hilts is more visually compelling. But with that being said, Aegislash is still awesome. I like how its shield carries over the idea of the Triquerta pattern over from Honedge, but now, and I don't think this is necessarily intentional, but the way the handle is, I don't know, seems less comfortable or possible to wield, leads me to the idea that over the millennia of draining life force as Honedge and Doublade, it has gained the power and sentience enough to act on its own, no longer needing a host or a wielder. This is my own fan theory, but still, I think it fits with its design more broadly, now boasting its own shield as well as a more ornate blade. Better than Doublade or not, I agree with the polls, this is very clearly 5-star design. Which means that yes, Aegislash gets a perfect 5-star overall score, and is indeed the first perfect 5-star Pokemon in Kalos, and in my opinion, very easily.
And click on these 2 videos to see how Talonflame had that title, but then lost it shortly after.
Kalos did a lot of things right with their Pokedex choosing quality over quantity for the most part, but then there are these things. However, we're rating them all, and the perfume Pokemon here, Spritzy, is disgustingly good in battle, actually. Pure Fairy type is fantastic on its own, of course, and outside of its awful speed, these are really good balanced stats for an early game Pokemon. But what actually kind of breaks it is its moves. It gets Calm Mind and Draining Kiss by level 21, and even Moonblast by 31? I'm sorry, what? For a pretty bulky, decently strong early game Fairy, that's nuts at this point in the game, which is how we judge it. Even better by the fact that you can evolve it basically immediately after finding it really helps out. 4.5 stars in battle prowess, I never would have guessed it. For availability, you can get it before the second gym in both Kalos and Galar, but it is a version exclusive in both, so that brings its score down to 4.5 stars. And I can't believe this thing is probably going to make it into the top 5, but its concept is also really good. It is of course a little sprite or pixie from European folklore, but it also pretty clearly has cosmetic or perfume inspirations, which ties directly into the healer Plague Doctor idea, since they filled said mask with perfume in an attempt to ward off disease. Tie that back again to the fact that it also resembles an actual bird like said Plague Doctor's masks, and I'm sorry, but I think that's a 5-star concept. For design, I have to keep telling myself this is not Aromatisse, Sins of the Father and all that good stuff. Spritzy itself is actually a pretty good fairy design. As mentioned before, it somehow blends the ideas of an actual perfume bottle, a Plague Doctor, a bird, and a fairy all together to make a surprisingly cohesive and interesting little fairy. Whether I like it or not, this is a good design. I agree with these few comments that it is judged on its awful evolution, and these 3-star polls are a bit unfair. I would say Forest will meet in the middle of 3.5, which will give Spritzy the final score of 4.375 stars overall, just missing the top 5. One of, if not the worst Pokemon designs of all time. It is as disappointing as it is gross. We're rating them all, and regardless of all of that, Aromatisse is actually shockingly good in battle. Around 100 in HP and special attack, yes, low speed, but decent defenses. Important note is that you can get this fully evolved Pokemon before the second gym in Kalos, but a bit later in Galar. Its move pool is also great. Combo Calm Mind and Draining Kiss for setup, then Moonblast for damage, Charm for support, and some really nice coverage with TMs. It does fall off a bit later, but still, I think 4 stars is fair for its setup potential alone. For availability, as I said, you can get it super early in Kalos, but it is a version exclusive and a trait evolution, so after both of those penalties, it brings its average down to 3.5 stars. For concept, Spritzy got 5 stars for being a unique and really coherent mix of fairy, perfume bottle, Plague Doctor, and bird. Aromatisse, however, takes an unnecessary and weird turn. It almost leans away from the Plague Doctor idea and instead moves closer to like an aristocrat in a masquerade mask, as well as like a can-can dancer for reasons, I suppose. It's more complex, sure, but not in a good way. This is a downgrade for sure. 4 stars. And its design is genuinely one of the worst in all of Pokemon. I'm sorry, I know that that's an extremely cold take, but it's so busy, incoherent, and just off-putting. I get that the whole leg sticking out of the dress thing is a staple from can-can dancers, but that's a very weird thing to put on a Pokemon. But I think that it's even more than that. It's just the design as a whole is really almost like painful to look at. So many features pop way too much, and none of it seems to blend together. It's just so bad in so many ways and disappointing for an evolution for Spritzy. You guys voted this thing as low as you could, and I agree. 1-star design. So that means Aromatisse's final score is 3.125 stars overall, a full star lower than Spritzy, and on the Kalos bottom 5. Swirlix and Slurpuff have a similar issue to Spritzy and Aromatisse, but not nearly as in your face. We're rating them all, and what I mean is that it's a decently cute first stage and a really disappointing evolution. But for now, in battle, how is Swirlix? Well, its stats are just flat out worse than its counterpart. They have the same base stat total, but Swirlix went for balance instead of min-max. Not terrible, not good. It also doesn't have Calm Mind and Draining Kiss early. Instead, it gets basically nothing at all until mid-game, where it should be evolved anyway. It's just a lot worse and frankly pretty bad outside of just being a fairy type, which is good on its own. 2.5 stars. It does have the same availability though, being obtainable before the second gym in Kalos and Galar as a version exclusive, so 4.5 stars. Conceptually, this is kind of a play on the typical fluffy white lapdog trope, but it also takes the term fairy floss, or cotton candy for my fellow Americans, and makes it into a literal fluffy fairy. Nice pun, I like it, but it's still nowhere near as interesting as Spritzy, 3 stars. And I think its design is fine. I really don't have any thoughts or opinions on it if I'm being honest. It's a reasonably cute first stage fluffy fairy dog thing that floats. Not bad at all. You guys voted it at 3 stars, and that sounds about right. Which will land Swirlix the final score of 3.25 stars overall and an unexpected spot on the bottom 5. Like its counterpart Aromatisse, Slurpuff is also a disappointing and kind of weird fairy evolution. We're rating them all, and it commits even further to the super balanced idea stats-wise, so it's not bad, of course, but it's not very good either. But it does get Cotton Guard and Draining Kiss into the mid to late game though, which is actually pretty awesome, especially to go along with Play Rough, Energy Ball, and a pretty nice list of TM options. It's better than I originally thought for sure. Fairy type alone is worth a decent score, but I think it's about a 3.5 in Battle Prowess. However, it's not only a version exclusive in Kalos and Galar, but also a trait evolution, so it takes 2 hefty penalties to its availability and gets a 3.5. And also like Aromatisse before it takes a pretty cohesive concept and kind of overcomplicates it. Swirlix was a pretty cute mix of a fluffy white lapdog and fairy floss or cotton candy, but Slurpuff basically becomes like meringue, I think is how you say it. And instead of a cute fluffy lapdog, now it's more like a clown dog thing. Also, apparently some people call cupcakes fairy cakes, I suppose. Oh, and this thing is a food tester with a bib. It's just not all coming together for me. I feel like these things don't mix very well. At best I can say is 3 stars. Its design though, again, is a disappointing evolution for Swirlix. Sure, it portrays its very messy concept fairly well. This thing is pretty clearly a little cupcake dog thing, but it's just so weird. I can't even put my finger on why. Maybe it's the odd pink hairstyle or the uneasy mouth. Maybe it's the tiny little arms. I really don't know. It just looks really odd and not appealing at all. I do think that its downgrade from Swirlix is pretty clear here though, and the polls do agree. 2 stars, which will bake down its final score to an even 3 stars overall and lands it on the bottom 5.
Little Inkay is quietly one of the best first stage Pokemon in Kalos. We're rating them all, and, well, sadly, I don't mean in battle, as it's pretty rough there. Dark Psychic is an awesome typing, at least, with only 2 weaknesses, and its ability Contrary is very much so abusable, but considering this thing doesn't evolve until level 30, these stats aren't going to cut it. Sure, it is pretty decent early on with a unique and useful move pool, but it's very clearly outclassed pretty quickly. 2.5 stars in Battle Prowess. But it is really available, actually. You can get it before the 2nd gym in Kalos right away in Alola and before the 3rd gym in Galar, which will round up its score to 5 stars. And conceptually, it's very obviously based on a cuttlefish, or even specifically a vampire squid, due to its use of flashing lights to daze opponents or prey. It and Malamar also take a lot of inspiration from the squid-like or hypnosis-using alien supervillains in Japanese media. I suppose we also can't ignore its evolution method, which at the time was the most unique in Pokemon, and it's cool, it adds some nice flavor. 3.5 stars. But I absolutely love this little guy's design, it's just so cute. I personally like it a lot more than Malamar, which is also awesome. But look at this adorable little huggable squid baby. Its soft white and pink upper half, the big round eyes, the tiny little smile, and mute blue tentacles. Now wait, turn it upside down and it just becomes a sad little baby Malamar. The polls have it around 4 stars, but I would give it an easy 5, so we'll meet in the middle at 4.5 for design. Which does mean that Little Inkay's final score is 3.875 stars overall. For a long time, Malamar was one of, if not my favorite, Kalos Pokemon, but how has it lasted through time? We're rating them all, and it is undeniably really fun and strong in battle. Most notably due to its ability Contrary, which makes stat-changing moves have the opposite effect, which not only is awesome on its own thanks to opposing Pokemon having things like Intimidate, or in playthroughs the Leer and Growl spam that you will see, but it also gets super power either by level up or right away from the move relearner, which becomes a 100% accurate 120 base power fighting move that boosts its attack and defense, which is utterly broken on its own, not to mention its otherwise really solid level up moves and a variety of TM options. Dark Psychic is also an awesome and strong type combo too, but its stats do leave a bit to be desired. It's a bit slow and not special otherwise, which is probably why it got a Mega and what keeps it at 4.5 stars in Battle Prowess here. And for availability, I think that it actually needs to take a bit of a hit from Inkay's 5. Since you do get Inkay basically right away in both Kalos and Alola, and it's pretty weak, so getting it all the way to level 30 is really rough, so it will get a penalty in those regions specifically and bring its score to 4.5 stars. Its concept is pretty great too though, starting with the incredibly unique evolution method, which was actually done as a nod to the way squid were typically illustrated, and I like how it takes the pretty clear vampire squid inspiration of using its flashing lights to daze prey, mixed with the extraterrestrial villain trope of hypnosis, and even ties that in further with the tentacles looking like Medusa or Gorgon tentacle hair. I don't know if that's quite 5 stars, but it is really awesome. 4.5 stars. And while I do prefer Inkay's design over Malamar now, I still think that Malamar has an absolutely incredible design. They managed to give it the partially translucent body with flashing hypnotizing lights while still having it fit very clearly as a Pokemon. The aforementioned Gorgon hair tentacles both look really awesome and tie it into that idea while still making it look like a squid. The face and eyes also nail the fact that Dark type is evil in Japanese and that this thing is based on supervillains. Just don't look at his silly little floppy feet, and it's a really good design. You guys voted it at 5 stars on one platform and 4 stars on the other, but I'm with the 5 stars here on design, which does upturn Malamar's final score to 4.625 stars overall,
overall and a spot on the Kalos top 5. Mega Malamar admittedly nails the idea this line was going for, but it just looks so bad. We're rating them all, and it is a tough one to judge in battle without knowing what its ability will be, but I think it's safe to say that it's not going to be contrary this time, or at least it shouldn't be. Mostly because it doesn't get superpower anymore, and sure, its level up moves are still really good, and its TM options are even more insane actually. A lot of coverage and setup if it has a different ability to be able to use them. In that case, with its awesome dark and psychic typing, and not amazing, but really solid stats across the board, will allow it to be a really strong Pokemon, but still nowhere near as strong as most other Megas, unfortunately. 4.5 stars in battle prowess. But for availability, you can only get Malamar's Megastone once the game is basically over, so 1 star. But conceptually, regular Malamar was a really nice blend of vampire, squid, hypnotizing supervillains, and Medusa or Gorgons, and Mega Malamar really focuses hard on the supervillain part of that, as well as pens, because ink? Okay. I don't know how they made this concept worse upon Mega Evolution, but they did. 4 stars, I guess. And for design, I already know that I disagree with the masses on this one, as you guys voted Rainbow Megamind here 4.5 stars somehow, but I just don't see it. In my opinion, it loses almost all of the charm that Inkay and Malamar had. The subtle translucence and flashing lights, the Gorgon hair, a touch of evil, while still being a recognizable squid. I get that Megas play up existing accents, but this is the direction that we decided to go. I actually don't mind the rainbow body and tentacles, that makes perfect sense and looks pretty cool, but the upturned collar, the cartoony giant brain, slimming down the whole thing to be like a pen instead of a squid, it just loses me entirely. I would give it like a 2.5, honestly, so we'll meet in the middle at 3.5 stars, and that will draw Mega Malamar's final score to 3.25 stars overall and a spot on the ZA Mega bottom 5. I was gonna talk about how forgettable Binacle and Barbaracle are, but then they got the Emperor of the Universe as a Mega Evolution, so... We're rating them all, and in battle, they're actually fairly interesting. Binacle has 2 very good abilities. Sniper, which boosts crit power, and Tough Claws, which increases power of contact moves, which it can take advantage of with moves like Slash and Clamp. Oh, that's it until it evolves at level 39. When did we go back to Unova? Water Rock is a fun type offensively, but not great defensively. Poor little guy had some potential, but with these abysmal stats and its aforementioned flaws, 2 stars in battle prowess. As for availability, you can at least get it before the 2nd gym in Kalos and before the 3rd gym in Galar, so it'll just barely average 5 stars. But oh, Barnacles, its concept is rough. You guessed it, it's Barnacles. Okay, maybe it's also inspired by this symbol from a few different cultures and religions, known by a few different names like the Khamsa, and I think it's Fatima, I believe. I apologize if I got those wrong, I tried. But other than the fact that it's a hand with an eye on it, it has absolutely nothing to do with that, so 2.5 stars at most. And its design just has nothing going for it. I'm sorry, sure, I suppose little faces on the hands are vaguely cute, but otherwise the weird asymmetrical yellowish claws as like hair or fingers, and the random white stripe across the arm belly thing, this whole thing is just messy, strange, and unappealing. You guys voted it close to 3 stars, so I'll go with 2.5 in design, which will give Binacle an even 3 stars overall and attach it to the bottom 5. Barbaracle is one of the strangest Pokemon in the Kalos Pokedex, but how will it do as we rate them all? Well, it can be pretty decent in battle, actually. Rock Water is great, at least offensively, but its weaknesses are a problem, even more specifically for this Pokemon. Because sure, it has 2 really strong options for its ability and has really solid stats, over 100 in both attack and defenses, and okay enough special defense and speed. But the main way that you're going to want to use this thing is Shell Smash, which if you can get off safely with these really awesome set of level up moves and even better TM options, have fun with your sweep. However, its aforementioned weaknesses make that a lot harder to pull off, so I think that 4 stars is fair here for battle prowess. Now, Binacle did get 5 stars in availability, but considering you catch it at level 13 in Kalos and 20 in Galar makes bringing that weak little Barnacle all the way to level 39 pretty awful, so it'll get a penalty down to 4.5 stars. Like I also said with Binacle, this may be very loosely based on the Hand of Fatima or the Khamsa, a religious and cultural symbol in a few regions, but outside of the actual eye on the hand thing, there's nothing really here connecting it. And outside of that, this is mostly just a stylized Goose Barnacle. Again, 2.5 stars for concept. Design-wise though, I was gonna say that I think it's a tad overhated or underrated, but you guys shockingly voted it at almost 4 stars. Now, I don't know if I agree with all that, but it's definitely not as bad as a lot of people say. Oddly enough, I like how the hand for a head is now more clearly a hand instead of just claws, and the feet are clearly feet, while leaving the arms as said claws. Somehow that makes it feel as more of a cohesive and interesting design of a creature rather than just a barnacle with claws. I also like the evolution of its rock armor clothes looking thing. I don't know, man. Like, yes, this is probably objectively an ugly Pokemon, but for some reason it works pretty well. I don't agree with the 4-star polls, but I'll give it a 3.5, which actually lands Barbaracle a surprising 3.625 stars overall. I can't unsee Mega Barbaracle hitting the Frieza pose, and that may just be its only redeeming quality. We're rating him all in. Okay, that's not quite true. Dude is a monster in battle. It has 140 attack, 130 defense, and still really solid special defense and speed. It is also now a rock and fighting type, which I'm just now learning, I'll admit, but that is definitely an upgrade from rock water. Wait, did they actually take away Shell Smash in Legends ZA? Well, that sucks. But to be fair, it still gets plenty of amazing TMs, including other setup options like Bulk Up and Swords Dance, along with plenty of coverage on top of its already pretty solid level up move pool. It's pretty hard not to get 5 stars in battle prowess with those stats, let's be honest. And according to the ZA availability scale, getting it after mission 22 gives it 3 stars. And concept is actually somewhat tough to judge here, because outside of the clear barnacle basis, all of its other inspirations I can find are very loose at best. I've mentioned the Hamsa or Hand of Fatima in the last 2 videos, but it doesn't actually have anything to do with this Pokemon outside of the visual similarity. Then there is the Hecatoncheires, but again, the only similarity is the fact that it has a bunch of hands. I don't know, those both seem like a reach. We'll round up to 3 stars. But design-wise, as much as I joke about the Frieza pose, that pose is genuinely the only good thing about this design. It's just so busy, which yeah, the many hand head things is the point, but the harsh black and orange contrasting everywhere, the white block of stone in the center, it's just way too much. And even outside of the more visually ambiguous issues, I really just don't like the way it looks. It doesn't fit in the world of Pokemon, in my opinion, and the polls are really funny. The one where you can see what you're voting for was all over the place, really even across the board, and the one where you can't was clearly 4 stars, which is absolutely insane. To me, this thing is hideous. I can't give it over 2.5 stars in design, so that does give Mega Barbaracle the final score of 3.375 stars overall, just missing the ZA bottom 5, and if you want to see how some other ZA Megas did, click one of these 2 videos here and be sure to subscribe.
Skrelp might actually be the worst Pokemon in the Kalos Pokedex. We're rating them all, and thankfully it has a cool evolution because holy crap, this thing is terrible in battle. Truly just mediocre stats across the board, and sure, okay, they're not terrible for the early game, until you realize this thing doesn't evolve until level 48. And I mean, I suppose its move pool is fine, and so are its abilities, but those things really don't matter on something as weak as Skrelp. A resounding 1 star in battle prowess. But hey, at least for availability, you can fish this thing up before the 4th gym in Kalos, and that's actually it, because we don't count DLC, post-game, or Paldea's open world yet. So that brings it to 4 stars in availability. And its concept is surely gonna save it, right? Wrong. It's based on a sea dragon. No, not like a dragon, like a seahorse sea dragon. This would be another it's just an animal Pokemon, but I suppose you could attribute its poison typing to the fact that seaweed, when it's rotting, lets off toxic fumes. Either way, no better than 2.5 stars. I do think that it has a pretty good design though. Sure, it's not some impressively cool or cute Pokemon, but it is a convincingly interesting little poisonous seaweed sea dragon thing. There's nothing innately positive that I can say about this thing's design other than maybe its seaweed tail, but there's also nothing really standing out as a negative either. It's perfectly fine. The polls have it at 3 stars, and I agree, 3 stars. But unfortunately, that is not enough to save Skrelp from a final score of 2.625 stars overall and a spot low on the bottom 5. For how embarrassingly bad little Skrelp is, Dragalge is surprisingly awesome. We're rating them all, and in battle, firstly, I think it's pretty cool that they made a poison and dragon type Pokemon in the region where they introduced the fairy type to show that type interaction. But even outside of that, poison dragon is a pretty solid typing. It's limited offensively, yes, but it is good defensively, which works really well with its stat spread actually, with 123 special defense, 90 defense, and even 97 special attack. And its move pool doesn't let it down either. Toxic, Sludge Bomb, and Dragon Pulse by level up, and some great TMs like Surf, Venoshock, Thunderbolt, and Shadow Ball. Dragalge ends up being not necessarily an amazing Pokemon, but a very solid option. 4 stars in battle prowess. But unfortunately, it has to take a penalty to availability because yes, you can fish up little Skrelp before the 4th gym in Kalos, but dragging that little weakling all the way to like the 7th gym is just ridiculous, and obviously is going to bring it down to 3.5 stars. And again, unfortunately, it doesn't really add anything interesting conceptually. Both it and Skrelp are based on sea dragons, which are basically just seahorses, as well as seaweed and its poison typing coming from the fact that seaweed lets off toxic fumes while it is rotting. But I'm surprised that there's not more to it for Dragalge. It's basically the exact same thing as Skrelp, just bigger. But like, where did its dragon typing come from other than the name Sea Dragon? Even its dex entries read as it's some sort of sea monster of legend destroying boats and such, but
there's just nothing. At least he's friends with my boy Delmice. 2.5 stars. Thankfully, its design is absolutely a step forward. It is a very weird and gangly or sickly looking sea creature, but not in a way that makes it off-putting. It works perfectly here. Like, brown and purple is definitely not a good color scheme to look at, but with the red and green with the seaweed cap, it just kind of works really well to make some sort of poisonous seaweed monster. It helps that these sea dragons are just really cool looking animals to begin with, but I think they did a really good job with this one. It pulled a 4 and a 5 on the 2 different platforms, but I think that 4 is the one that I would go with here for design, which will bring its final score to a respectable 3.5 stars overall. Mega Dragalge's new ability is going to be Regenerator, or something along those lines. Hear me out. We're rating them all, and in battle, like most megas, it is of course very strong. Now yes, we don't know what its ability will be yet, though I do have my guesses for what I said before that we'll get into, but honestly, even regardless, it has a case to be made for 5 stars. Just its stats alone are pretty awesome. 163 special defense, 132 special attack, and even 105 defense. Poison Dragon is also a very cool typing that is pretty good defensively and works very well with said stat spread. And it learns Toxic, Dragon Pulse, and Sludge Bomb by level up, along with some pretty powerful TM options. I think it's more of a 4.5 in battle prowess for now, but if we find out that its ability is like Regenerator or maybe something cooler or newer that is better, then yeah, I think we can change it 5 stars later. As for availability, according to the ZA Mega's availability scale, it gets 1.5 stars for being available after mission 31. And conceptually, it finally adds at least a little bit of something to this line. Both Skrelp and Dragalge were of course sea dragons whose poison typing came from the fact that seaweed lets off toxic fumes when it is rotting. But its Mega, interestingly enough, adds a regenerative healing property to it, which is a nice play on the actual seaweed Laminara's promising status as a medicinal remedy for both radiation poisoning and cancer growth. Absolutely a big step up, but still not that interesting for a Pokemon. 3.5 stars. For design, however, like a lot of this new set of megas that we've gotten, I'm really not a big fan. It doesn't look bad by any mean, it just continues this weird new trend of like the Pokemon itself isn't actually what Mega evolved, it's this item that it's carrying, or just this specific part of the Pokemon that Mega evolved. Like it's not actually the Pokemon, and I don't like that. Now, the false eyes may look kind of dumb, but they're at least a cool idea, and I see what they were going for there. And the long seaweed coming off of the head is the same seaweed, at least visually, as the one we mentioned in concept. But I do like how that red coloring is starting to bleed down into the purple parts of the body. That gives its design some nice depth. Again, I'm not saying this is a bad design by any means, I just don't agree with the 5-star voting that it got on these polls. It's pretty cool, but I think that 4 stars is more fair. Meaning that Mega Dragalge's final score is 3.375 stars overall, just missing the ZA Mega bottom 5, and if you want to see how some of the other ZA Megas have done, click on one of these 2 videos and make sure you're subscribed. Clauncher is supposed to be like the version exclusive opposite to Skrelp, but they were not created equally. We're rating them all, and Clauncher is just better in every way. Firstly, in battle prowess, where that is especially true. But not because its stats are better, those are arguably even worse. And even its move pool is only marginally better with moves like Swords Dance and a boosted Water Pulse later on. The main difference is because of how we judge Pokemon on this series. We judge them based on when you would be using them. And Clauncher's level 37 evolution, while still being pretty rough, is nowhere near as rough as Skrelp's level 48, which is just ridiculous. Both of them are awful later, but Clauncher isn't as bad as late, so I guess like a 2 in battle prowess at best. For availability, they're exactly the same. They're all fishable around the 4th gym, but what I did miss with Skrelp and Dragalge is that these are all version exclusives of each other, so that brings the whole lot down to 3.5 stars in availability, which then moves Skrelp and Dragalge to 2.5 and 3.375 respectively, and puts Skrelp tied for last in Kalos. Oof. But anyway, concept. This one is quite literally just an animal. However, the pistol shrimp is almost more believable as a Pokemon than an actual animal. It actually uses its enlarged claws to emit a powerful wave of bubbles and water to both knock out prey and even break glass. Way better than most just an animal concepts, but still, 2.5 stars. And design, while simple, I think it looks really good. As my 3-year-old would say, the sky blue looks really good, accented with the yellow and the black, and even the armored segmentations help make it look like an armored predator. The polls have it at 3 stars, but I think that's a little low, honestly. Simple is not always a bad thing. 3.5 stars in design. But that sadly does not save Clauncher from a 2.875 star final score and a spot on the bottom 5. Clauncher is one of those Pokemon that's really cool. I just never use it for some reason. Maybe if they would have given it a Mega like its counterpart did, if I had one, then we'd use it.
We're running them all, and it is genuinely pretty awesome in battle, mainly due to two things. Its 120 base special attack and its Mega Launcher ability, making moves like Aura Sphere, Dragon Pulse, Dark Pulse, and Water Pulse, which it all gets from Move Reminder, 50% stronger. Now, its other stats aren't impressive by any means. It's pretty slow and has pretty mid HP, but its defenses are decent enough to at least make this not a liability defensively. Sure, it lacks in staying power, but it is just a delete button, so 4 stars for battle prowess. Now, I could see this also getting a late evolution penalty like Dragalge did, but bringing Clauncher from 25 to 37 is rough, sure, but nowhere near in the same stratosphere as bringing that awful little Skrelp all the way to level 48. So it'll avoid the penalty and stay 3.5 stars. Clawitzer, like Clauncher, is of course a very literal representation of a pistol shrimp as a Pokemon. The actual animals do indeed have a giant claw that they can use to emit a powerful wave of water to disable prey and to break glass, and it's a pistol shrimp. Where Clawitzer uses its to pierce armor because it's a howitzer shrimp. It's really cool, but still very simple. 3 stars. Yet for design, it is again very simple. It is a giant shrimp or lobster-looking creature with a huge claw that is a cannon. But it looks really good for what it is. The black band on its face makes it look like that little yellow eye is almost peering out of like a slit in armor or like a window in a tank or something. The segmented body looks like nice natural armor, and of course the giant cannon is awesome. I'm a simple man, I grew up with Gen 1. You throw some cannons on a water type, I'm in. You guys did voted a shockingly high 5 stars though, and I'm not quite in that far. It's still a very good design, I would say like a solid 4, so we'll meet in the middle at 4.5, which does position Clawitzer for a respectable final score of 3.75 stars overall. And click on one of these 2 videos to see how some of the other cool Kalos Pokemon have done so far.
Helioptile had so much potential, but it's just so disappointing.
We're rating them all, and yeah, normal electric is a pretty cool and unique typing, but it's not that good. And dry skin is better, I suppose. It gives you an immunity, but also a weakness. But its stats are what really lets it down. Sure, base 70 speed and 61 special attack is pretty solid. Why does it have to be this frail? Base 289 base stat total is just insulting. Parabolic Charge is an awesome move, but that's pretty much all it gets until way later than you'd actually want to use this thing. 2 stars in battle prowess. But at least you can catch it before the second gym in Kalos and around the 4th in Galar, so that does average out to a 4.5 in availability. For concept, I was originally going to rant about how the Heliolisk line, the Sun Lizard line, was not a fire type. But I think having it be like a solar panel lizard who uses its frills as solar panels to store and generate electricity from sunlight is a lot cooler. 3.5 stars. However, the design really does nothing to take advantage of that. Never would I have guessed the whole solar panel frill thing if I didn't read its dex entries. In reality, it's a pretty plain and boring yellow lizard. Even its frills, which is like its whole point, is wholly unremarkable until it evolves. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think this is a very good design at all, but you guys voted it over 3 stars for some reason, so we'll meet in the middle at 2.5 stars for design, which does generate Helioptile, the final score of 3.125 stars overall. After reading more into Heliolisk, it's a lot more interesting than I originally thought, but it's still kind of a letdown. We're rating them all, and at least upon evolution it becomes usable in battle. It gains a whopping 50 into special defense and 40 or so into speed and special attack. Dry Skin is also a nice ability if you're careful, but it does have to deal with the whole not learning moves after evolving from an evolution stone thing, which was always a stupid idea. But at least it does learn Parabolic Charge fairly early enough and have TMs like Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, and Surf, because it's like one of those lizards that runs on the water. Get it? It can be a nice special attacker, but its weird normal electric typing and its 50 defense is a bit scary. 3.5 stars in battle prowess. And for availability, honestly, it should probably get a boost from Helioptile's 4.5 because the Sunstone is available so early and so easily. 5 stars. And as I hinted at in Helioptile's video and this intro, its concept is a lot more interesting than I originally gave it credit for. You'd think that the whole sun lizard Pokemon would be a fire type, but instead, like actual lizards who bask in the sun for warmth, Heliolisk basks in the sun to generate and store electricity with its solar panel frills. Nice twist of expectations, 3.5 stars. Its design also thankfully takes a pretty decent step up from Helioptile, which was disappointingly boring. Helioptile's whole thing in general, but especially visually, is the those retractable solar panel-like frills. They are also kind of shockingly plain, but at least when they're fully extended, they do look like a sun. I like it, but I again don't agree with the almost 4-star polls. We'll meet in the middle at 3.5, which does at least give Heliolisk a pretty solid 3.875 stars overall. And to see how some other cool Kalos Pokemon have done so far, click on one of these 2 videos, and I'll see you there. Thank you. The Kalos fossils as a whole are easily and undeniably the coolest fossil Pokemon out there. We're rating them all, and I personally love Little Tyrant, but how will it fare here? Well, in battle, it hits like an absolute truck with its base 89 attack and its strong jaw ability boosting its bites and crunches to 90 and 120 base power respectively. It even gets Stealth Rock's Charm and Dragon Tail for support, and its Rock Dragon typing is definitely not great, but it's pretty cool. Its main downside is its really bad speed and special defense, made even worse by its level 39 evolution. It can be very, very strong, but it's pretty risky to use, so we'll go with 3 stars in battle prowess. But you can get the little guy before the second gym in Kalos and at the end of the second island in Alola, but as a version exclusive, so that just barely averages out its availability to 4.5 stars. Fossils usually start out at a pretty generous baseline of like 3.5 stars or so, just because the whole concept of reviving an ancient extinct Pokemon is pretty awesome. And I usually don't include naming themes in the concept section of these videos, but for Tyrunt and Tyrantrum, that's kind of like the whole basis of its concept. Its whole idea is playing on the words and the different ways that cultures have used to describe dinosaurs in the past, ranging from dragons in Japan to royalty in Greece. But yeah, turning those into a literal tyrant, king, dragon, dino Pokemon is pretty awesome, 4 stars. But what about design? Well, I personally think they did a really good job at blending all of that together. It's a pretty cute little baby dino, yet still very clearly capable and dangerous, a almost perfect pre-evolution for something as awesome as Tyrantrum. I don't think it's quite top tier enough for a 5-star consideration, but it is a very good fossil baby dino design, 4 stars, which will end up giving Tyrunt a very solid final score of 3.875 stars overall. Is Tyrantrum the best overall fossil Pokemon? Well, it is my favorite, but let's find out. We're rating them all, and I have a very special guest for this episode, but first, in battle, it is very, very strong, but not without its negatives. Rock Dragon is a very cool, but not great typing, unfortunately, and its special defense is absolutely a liability considering it's not that fast. This is kind of the Golem or Rhyperior conundrum all over again, where if you use it correctly, it's great, but if you don't, it's gone, but not quite to that same extent. Avoid special attacks that it's weak to and watch it absolutely wreck shop with its basically 120 in both attack and defense, along with its strong jaw boosted crunches, which is like 120 base power, not to mention Dragon Claw, Earthquake, and plenty of other options. 4.5 stars in battle prowess. For availability, I could see the reasoning for a penalty since it evolves at level 39, but you do revive Tyrant at level 20, and it's pretty strong on its own, so I think it squeaks by without one, it'll stay 4.5 stars. And as I said with Tyrant, the entire basis of this Pokemon is taking the different ways that cultures called a T-Rex and merging all of that into one Pokemon. The Japanese called them cruel ruler dragons, and the Greek/Latin name of Tyrannosaurus Rex directly translates into Tyrant King. Add on the awesome baseline of it being a revived ancient fossil Pokemon, and that's a 4-star concept. For design, let's let Shattered Time, a fellow Pokemon creator, lead us off.
I love fossil type Pokemon. They're my favorite types, and Tyrantrum is probably one of the best ones. He looks like the king of all dinosaurs, literally. He's got a crown on the top of his head, even has a nice regal, majestic beard. The coloration is both majestic in nature, but also very dominant. The scaling looks amazing, and it just kind of totally encapsulates the perfect design for what would be a fossil king of all dinosaurs. And so, all that being said, it's got to be 5 out of 5 stars. I'm not sure what else you could rate it. I gotta put it 5 out of 5.
I have a few things to add, but I completely agree. I love how the white royal collar that it has could be a play on the hypothesis that T-Rex actually had feathers. But even outside of that, it's just an incredible and imposing, amazing dragon dino fossil Pokemon design. 5 stars. And that will crown Tyrantrum with a final score of 4.5 stars overall and a spot on the Kalos top 5. Little Amora is unfortunately the odd man out in the otherwise awesome Kalos fossil Pokemon. We're rating them all, and sadly, that is also absolutely true in battle, which is unfortunate because it actually has a lot of potential. Rock Ice is surprisingly an amazing type combination, offensively at least, especially with its Refrigerate ability turning normal moves into Ice type and boosting them by 20%. It even has Thunder Wave for utility. But we can't avoid the Sauropod in the room, its aforementioned type combination defensively. You pair that with its low speed and defenses, and it just immediately makes this Pokemon so much worse. And then on top of that, it has a little 39 evolution, just like Tyrant, but still, 2.5 stars in battle prowess. But also, like Tyrant before it is available before the second gym in Kalos and around mid-game in Alola, but as a virgin exclusive, so it just barely averages out to 4.5 in availability. Conceptually, my toddlers love to yell, "It's a Diplodocus!" But apparently it's more specifically based on the Amargasaurus, which was a dinosaur that had frill-like sails on its spine. And where the Tyrantrum line was based on tyrants or kings, the Aurorus line seems to be based on queens and queenly royalty, but Amora a little bit less so. Instead, they lean more into the Aurora Borealis, where its fins can change colors and of course its ice typing. 4 stars for concept. Unfortunately, design is where I once again feel like Amora is the weak link in this grouping. It's still a cute little icy dino, but it just seems to lack some of the personality that the other 3 have. I'll go with 3.5 stars. So that will still give Amora a pretty solid 3.625 stars overall. People say Milotic is the prettiest Pokemon overall, but Aurorus is my pick by far, says this comment, and I completely agree other than maybe Alolan Ninetales. We're rating them all, and how will Aurorus fare overall? Well, in battle, it still has the same downsides as its pre-evolution, like its rock-ice typing defensively and its low speed, but at least with Aurorus, they actually gave it some pretty respectable bulk to compensate, as long as you avoid physical attacking, fighting types, and steel types. And while Refrigerate is an awesome ability, all it's really going to do is turn your Hyper Beams into Ice type and boost them by 20%, which is pretty awesome. And outside of that, it gets some pretty amazing TMs like Calm Mind and plenty of coverage, but it doesn't quite make up for that horrible defensive typing. 4 stars in battle prowess. And I feel like this one should get the availability penalty that Tyrantrum avoided, because bringing Amora from level 20 or 15 all the way to level 39 is quite a bit more rough than Tyrant. 4 stars. However, concept is the one area where I feel like Aurorus has a major step up over Tyrantrum. It was specifically based off of the Amargasaurus, a sauropod-style dinosaur that had sail-like fins, as well as taking aspects from royalty like Tyrantrum, but this time more queenly, which we'll get into in design. But Aurorus goes a step further with its basis behind the Aurora Borealis with its color-changing fins and of course its ice typing. So you add those 3 things on top of the already awesome baseline of it being a revived ancient fossil Pokemon, and I think that's a 5-star concept. And design-wise, it seems as if a lot of us are in agreement here that Aurorus is one of the prettiest or most beautiful designs in Pokemon. Its icy crystals on that white pattern on its head help form a tiara, as well as just general jewelry along the rest of its body. Its big sail fins come off perfectly believable as like a part of a dinosaur, as you know, head crests or whatever, but it could also very clearly blend into the queenly idea as either flowing hair or a flowing dress. Amazing color scheme, amazing shiny, 5-star design, which actually sits the queen right next to the king with a final score of 4.5 stars overall and a seat on the Kalos top 5. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe, and check out one of these 2 videos if you want to see how some other fossil Pokemon have fared. Sylveon may just be the best evolution, and it is the poster child for the fairy type, so how will it compare to the others as we rate them all? Well, it does have a shot at that crown in battle, as Fairy is a top 3 type or so by itself. Then its stats are really nice. 110 special attack and 130 special defense are incredible. Sure, it's slow and frail physically, but it does have 95 HP and the cute charm ability to further nerf those physical attackers and shore up that weakness. Its move pool also contributes with recovery from Draining Kiss and some setup and damage from Moonblast, Shadow Ball, and Calm Mind. It's not quite top tier without its hidden ability, but it's still a very, very good Pokemon for a playthrough. 4.5 stars. As for availability, you can find it at the latest Route 10 in Kalos and even earlier in Alola and Galar, which on its own would average this thing to 5 stars, but that's not even to mention Pokemon-Ami and Affection Evolution, which makes it pretty much instant, so yeah, 5 stars. However, Sylveon honestly feels the most disconnected from that shared concept that all of these evolutions, well, share, which is of course the whole mutation and evolution from the elements surrounding it. You know, fire, water, electric, grass, ice, day and nighttime. Okay. Maybe it's not the only one that veered away from that concept, but still, turning into a fairy because of love is so cheesy, especially since it seems to have almost no ties to its inspirational origins. Its dex entries talk about how its ribbons are used to either distract enemies or forge bonds with its trainers, but I can't find any connections with that at all. All I can find is that this, just like every other Kanto-tied fairy type, is based off of the Moon Rabbit, supposedly, or maybe the Moon Rabbit's owner. Every other evolution has gotten 5 stars in concept, and I feel like the baseline has to be at a minimum of like a 4, but this is very clearly the weakest link, so we'll go with 4 stars. But even the worst of the evolutions in terms of design, which in my opinion would be like Jolteon and Glaceon, are still pretty great Pokemon overall that a lot of people love. To put it plainly, it's pretty hard to screw up an evolution, and while I don't necessarily love Sylveon, I'd probably put it in like the middle of the pack, it's still a really good design. The color palette is both visually appealing and very convincingly fairy. The different shades of pink and blue accent the white really nicely. This is very much so a cotton candy fairy, definitely not the like folklore fairies one. Way different vibe. But still, it's a pretty happy and cute Eevee. Pretty hard to screw up. You guys voted it around 5 stars, and while I wouldn't necessarily put it quite that high, I'm not mad at that. 5 stars. So that will tie Sylveon to the final score of 4.625 stars overall, and to the other fairy in our top 5. Go ahead and get your pitchforks ready. I know it's coming. I have never really cared for Hawlucha. We're rating them all, and don't worry, that does not mean that I'm unaware of how fantastic this thing is for a playthrough. Firstly, Flying Fighting is an incredible typing, which hits 8 other types for super effective damage. While both of its abilities have some niche uses, and its stats are very good. 92 attack and 118 speed might not equal out to be your best Pokemon come late game, but for the early and mid game, it very likely will. Especially since its move pool is just as good. Home Claws, Aerial Ace, Karate Chop, and Roost early on. And of course, its signature move, Flying Press, which has its own type chart and still confuses me to this day. Not to mention the loads of TMs that it gets for setup, utility, and damage. I don't think its stats quite hold up in the late game to give it 5 stars, but it is very close, 4.5 stars. For availability, you can find it before the 3rd gym in Kalos, before the 1st in Alola, and after the 3rd in Galar, which will average out its score to 4.5 stars. There's also not really anything to knock on its concept either. Most obviously is that it's based off of luchadors from Mexico, but it could also take inspiration from Aztec Eagle Warriors, and apparently, fun fact, masked wrestling actually originated in Paris, which considering Kalos is the French region, that makes perfect sense. Good concept, 4 stars. Design is where I know for a fact I deviate from the pack. You guys voted it up around 4 or 5 stars in design pretty clearly, but I just don't really get the draw. Now with that being said, it's still a good design whether I like it or not. They managed to make a little eagle wrestler humanoid enough to sell the concept without getting too close to that weird realm of humanoid Pokemon that most of us dislike. The color scheme is good and could be a callback to its Mexican roots. The mask looks cool, it looks strong, it looks aggressive. This is a good design whether I like it or not. So I'll lean closer to where you guys are at and I'll give it 4 stars. So that will bring Hawlucha to the final score of 4.25 stars overall, just missing the Kalos top 5. Mega Hawlucha, along with a few others, are the bright spots in the otherwise not good group of megas they gave us in ZA. We're rating them all, and I'm sure if you've been playing Champions lately, you are well aware of how good this thing can be in battle. 137 base attack along with pretty solid defenses and 118 speed alone is formidable. Add that onto its unique Flying Fighting typing and the no guard ability, and I really don't foresee anybody arguing with the fact that this is 5 stars in battle prowess. And you get it around mission 17 in ZA, which at the moment is the only metric we have to judge it by, and therefore gives it 4 stars in availability. Conceptually, like Hawlucha, it is of course based on a luchador, along with maybe some Aztec Eagle Warrior stuff and the origins of masked wrestling in Paris, apparently. Mega Hawlucha seems to be going for more of a golden eagle here, but otherwise it's pretty much the same, 4 stars. Design-wise though is where Mega Hawlucha absolutely nails it, which may seem surprising as it is a very, very simple upgrade from base Hawlucha. But the now golden feathered either chest plate or shoulder plates type of armor type of thing looks really good, along with the falconry hood as it now covers the eyes, unlike base Hawlucha. Those are great details, and I really like this style of Mega Evolution, kind of that Charizard Y mentality. You don't need to make huge changes, just improve upon that base design and add some even spicier details. More like an Apex version of that Pokemon instead of like a brand new evolution. The polls have this one at 5 stars and I completely agree, 5 stars in design, which will grant Mega Hawlucha the final score of 4.5 stars overall and not only a spot on the ZA Megas top 5, but even the overall Megas top 5. And if you like this one, be sure to like and subscribe and click on one of these 2 videos to check out how the other ZA Megas have done. Dedenne is easily the first or second most forgettable Pika clone alongside Morpeko, so how will it compare as we rate them all? Well, in battle, it's actually pretty good. Electric Fairy is a shockingly good typing with 5 resistances and immunity and only 2 weaknesses. It also has 101 speed and a usable 81 special attack. And I could see why you would think with its cheek pouch ability and parabolic charge keeping it healthy that maybe that would shore up those bad defenses, but no, not really. And its move pool is actually pretty good too, with like Charm and Nuzzle and Volt Switch, but unfortunately this is like a 3 in battle prowess at best. Availability wise though, you can catch it after the 3rd gym in Kalos and midway through the 3rd island in Alola, so that will average its score out to 4.5 stars. And like all Pika clones except for the good ones, this is of course an electric rodent. But outside of that, there's really nothing here other than maybe a connection to the French Tooth Fairy, which is like a little mouse, which sure, maybe I could see if Dedenne had literally anything to do with teeth or even like gathering shiny objects or something, but it doesn't. So we'll go with 2.5 stars for concept. For design, however, I will admit that this is at least very cute. Chunky little guy with a cute little tooth and bashfully holding its tail. Apparently this thing has some sort of cult following out there, which I hope they don't find this video, but for me personally, it's entirely forgettable outside of being somewhat cute.
So I'm gonna let the polls take the flack for this one because you guys voted it at 3 stars, so we'll go with 3 stars. And hey, at least that will give the Dene the final score of 3.25 stars overall, not quite the worst Pika clone score so far. I may be alone in this one, but I think that little Carbink is pretty awesome. We're rating them all, and it may not be amazing in battle, but it is surprisingly solid. Rock Fairy is a unique and fairly balanced typing both defensively and offensively. That, however, cannot be said for Carbink's stats, as it dumps 150 into both defenses and then a measly 50 into everything else. I used it in my Fairy-only Nuzlocke of Sun video as more of a support Pokemon with moves like Reflect and Stealth Rocks, Toxic, Protect, and it was honestly really useful, and now it can use some offensive moves, but you're probably better off not doing that. So I don't think I can give it higher than like a 3 in Battle Prowess, and that might even be generous. For availability though, you can get it before the 3rd gym in Kalos and on the 1st island in Alola, so that just barely averages its score out to 5 stars. Conceptually, this is a carbuncle, hence the name Carbink. The carbuncle is a creature of myth originating from South American mining tales, described as a small-ish animal with a shining mirror on its head like a glowing coal. And you may be searching for that connection between Carbink and Diancie, but at least from Carbink's perspective, there isn't one. But they're the only 2 Pokemon who have the jewel species, and they have identical defensive stats. And that's because once you look at Diancie's dex entries, you see that it is literally just a mutated Carbink, but we'll get there. 3-star concepts for Carbink. And this is where design gets super subjective. I gained a lot of appreciation for this little guy during that aforementioned Nuzlocke video. So I like it a lot, but by looking at the polls and the actual design, it's not that good. I think the little blue eyes and the silvery gemstones along its gray stone body work really well and look really good, but then those weird ears and white scarf thing kind of comes out of nowhere and takes away from the design. This is one that I think would look better if it were more simple. I would probably go with like a 3.5 or so we'll lean on the 3-star polls that you guys gave and give 3 stars. So that does land Carbink with a final score of 3.5 stars overall. If you liked this one, be sure to like and subscribe and check out one of these 2 videos to see how some other fairy types have done so far. I love Gumi, but I cannot give you an explanation as to why, but this that you're about to see is probably a big reason. We're rating them all, and shout out to the Goat Shady. Maybe if everybody tags him, we'll get him on a rate them all episode. But for now, in battle, Gumi is sadly really bad. No, like even its dex entry says that Gumi is the worst dragon-type Pokemon. 35 defense, 45 HP, and 40 speed on its own is enough to tank its score, and its other stats really don't help. None of its 3 abilities really help either. Sap Sipper is cool, but is almost never going to come up. Hydration, same, and Gooey is great, but we don't count hidden abilities. Unfortunately, its move pool is also complete and utter garbage, along with the fact that it doesn't evolve until level 40. Sorry, Goomy, that's 1 star in Battle Prowess. And its availability is all over the place. In Kalos, you can get Goomy before the 6th gym, in Alola, you can get it before the 2nd trial, but then in Galar, it's not available until Lake of Rage as a version exclusive. So that does average out its score to 3 stars. Conceptually, this whole line, especially Goomy, at face value, seems to be pretty much a snail. There's not a lot of hints as to why or how it's a dragon. Apparently Goodra at least is linked to this mythical dragon mollusk thing from French folklore living under a city, as well as the whole Japanese trope of something living to 1,000 years and becoming a dragon, which I guess we can extend down to Goomy. It's pretty weak for a pseudo concept, but still pretty cool overall. 4 stars. God, I love this little guy's design, and I honestly couldn't even really tell you why. Because just by looking at it, it's absolutely nothing special. It's either just like a blob of goo or a purple slug. But for some reason, the tiny little pinprick eyes and the squiggly little smile are so cute. Funnily enough, I know that I'm biased towards this one, so I was gonna lean on the polls, and one of them was completely balanced across the board, and the other one was 5 stars, so that really doesn't help. I guess we'll just meet in the middle, and I'll give it 4 stars for design, which unfortunately will give Little Goomy 3 stars overall and a spot on both the Kalos bottom 5 and the Pseudo's bottom 5. Sliggoo is one of those Pokemon that I absolutely forget is a part of a pseudo-legendary line or even exists at all. We're rating them all, and does that mean that it's equally as horrible in battle as Goomy? Well, no, not really. Sure, it's still a physical liability, but now with its 113 special defense and 83 special attack, it's at least usable, especially considering you only have to use it for 10 levels. It does still have 2 pretty much useless abilities, however, and a pretty mediocre move pool outside of a few good TMs. So it's okay, but still definitely not great. I'll give it 3 stars in Battle Prowess. As for availability, Goomy averaged out to 3 stars, but in Alola specifically, you have to raise that horrible little thing like 20
20 or so levels to evolve it, so we'll get a small penalty to that region specifically, but still ends up averaging 3 stars. Conceptually, Sliggoo is pretty much just an actual slug, but Goodra at least is based on this mythical dragon slug thing from French folklore, so we'll just let the whole line get 4 stars. Design-wise, I know, hot take and all, but the middle evolution here is clearly the worst. But it genuinely is, like Goomy is absurdly cute for no reason, and then Goodra has that nice Dragonite-esque mix of like a friendly, lovable, magical dragon that's still clearly powerful. And Sliggoo is a slug. Again, I'm gonna make the comparison where Goomy has the no thoughts pinprick eyes and Goodra has very typical Pokemon eyes. And then Sliggoo has... what are these? It even has the not an actual shell hump on its back for no good reason that Goodra does not have either. It just loses me entirely, for being honest. It did also pull the lowest at around 3 stars, but I think that might even be a bit generous. I'm gonna go with 2.5 in design. So that does stick Sliggoo to the final score of 3.125 stars overall, joining Goomy on both the Kalos bottom 5 and the Pseudos bottom 5. Goomy and Sliggoo are terrible Pokemon, the worst dragon types according to the Pokedex, but Goodra thankfully saves them in like every aspect. We're rating them all, and in battle, Goodra is genuinely pretty great, as to be expected from a pseudo-legend. Sorry to interject, those of you guys who are watching this on long-form, horizontal YouTube format, which actually you're the only one seeing this, so hi, thank you for watching. But unfortunately, this is going to be the last Rate 'em All episode that is posted in this format. They're all still going to be posted as vertical shorts, as they always have been, and always will be. But unfortunately, this is just the way it has to go for the channel right now. But I appreciate you for watching, and of course, keep watching the shorts, please. It of course has that 600 base stat total with a whopping 150 in HP, around 100 in both attacks, 90 HP, and a decent 80 speed. And its move pool is amazing for an offensive Pokemon with moves like Dragon Pulse, Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Earthquake, Flamethrower, Sludge Bomb, Rock Slide, Draco Meteor, and more. But surprisingly, it doesn't really get anything that you would expect a slower, bulkier Pokemon to have. It doesn't even learn Surf in Gen 6, surprisingly, that they did fix in Gen 8, but still. Its 2 main abilities are pretty interesting, but pretty bad, sadly, and very rarely ever going to come up, and its hidden ability is great, but we don't count those here. I'm on the fence of whether or not this one should get 5 stars in Battle Prowess, but I think that its stat total alone and its variety and move pool gives it that 5 stars. Oh, and Hisui and Goodra will get its own video later on. And since it only evolves 10 levels after Sliggoo, it will stay the same 3 stars as its pre-evolutions for being available around the 6th gym in Kalos, on the 2nd island in Alola, and pretty late game in Galar. Conceptually, as we've let the other 2 mooch off of, Goodra is based off of this mythical mollusk serpent creature from French folklore living under cities, as well as the common trope in Japanese folklore of things living to 1,000 years old and becoming either magical or a dragon. 4 stars. But I do think that Goodra has been a bit overhated in terms of design. Sure, it's not some big menacing kaiju dragon monster, instead it leans more towards that Dragonite line of thinking of this friendly, magical, whimsical dragon. This time it just delivers hugs dripping in goo instead of the mail. I like it a lot, actually. It's simple yet interesting. Taking purple and green, a usually pretty off-putting color combination, and then doubling down by adding dripping green goo, and then ending up with a pretty cute yet clearly powerful dragon is genuinely pretty impressive. The polls voted it up at 5 stars, and I don't know if I quite agree with putting it that high, but I'm not too far off, so I'm fine with giving it 5 stars in design. So that slides Goodra up to the final score of 4.25 stars overall, missing out on the Kalos top 5, but ending up on the Pseudos top 5 instead. And if you liked this one, click on one of these 2 videos to see how some of the other pseudo-legendaries have done.
Klefki is such a frustratingly mid Pokemon considering its absolutely amazing typing and ability. We're rating them all, and as I'm sure most of us will agree on, Steel Fairy is the best type combination in Pokemon, and Prankster is an incredible ability. It gives priority to all of your status moves, ensuring that they will always go first, which in competitive is amazing, but in a playthrough, it's really not all that impactful. Especially in Gen 6, where its move pool really doesn't have a whole lot to take advantage of that in a meaningful way. But to be fair, its stats are actually fairly decent across the board, so I think this will get 3 stars in Battle Prowess. But you can't even find it until after the 6th gym in Kalos and after the Ghost Trial in Alola, which just barely brings up its average to 3 stars. And its concept is surprisingly shallow. Directly from one of the creatives at Pokemon, Klefki was designed with the thought in mind of secret mansions and their mysterious keys. And sure, you could link Klefki back to the old pagan tales of fairies stealing keys and shoes and such, but again, that's pretty thin. I do love its Pokemon X Dex entry though, as it threatens attackers by fiercely jingling its keys at them.
Still, that's like a 2.5 star concept. As for its design, however, you all knew this was coming. This is literally a keychain. As much as I like object Pokemon and I want to defend this, I really can't. Maybe its body shape is that of like a clef from a musical note, and its keyhole mouth could be a call on like cleft lips, but I think that's probably more of an unfortunate coincidence than an intentional design choice. The polls have this at 3 stars, but I honestly think that's way too high. I'm gonna give it 2 stars in design. So that will lock in Klefki's final score to 2.625 stars overall and low on the bottom 5. Phantump is unironically one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, and I will not apologize for that. We're rating them all, and that unfortunately has absolutely nothing to do with how it is in battle. Ghost Grass is a cool typing, but isn't very good either offensively or defensively, and its stats aren't very impressive either. 70 attack is fine, but everything else leaves a lot to be desired. It does get Confuse Ray and Leech Seed very early on though, which is an incredibly underrated combination in and of itself. And you can evolve it pretty much whenever thanks to trades, so it's not terrible, but it's not great either. 2.5 stars in battle prowess. As for availability, however, you can't find it until after the 6th gym in Kalos, but then on the 2nd island in Alola, and after the 4th gym in Galar. So that will bring its average up to 3.5 stars. Phantump does have a pretty famously dark concept for Pokemon though. Straight out of the Pokedex, this is a lost child who perished in the woods and whose spirit possessed a tree stump. Okay, I promise that is not why it's one of my favorites. That's wild. But to be fair, said inspiration does come from Japanese folklore with things like the stump of a Kadama and then like dryads and things like that. Creepy, dark, kind of out of place in Pokemon, but a pretty solid concept, 4 stars. But this is, in my opinion, an absolutely perfect first stage design for a ghost and grass type. The classic cartoony, wispy, ghostly body, the tiny little ghost arms, even more wisp coming out of the stump head. And said stump head is perfect for this with those big shocked eyes and the tiny little mouth. The tree branches coming off of the side of that stump head is also a really nice play on like old school horned helmets. Absolutely perfect design. I cannot believe you guys voted this below Trevenant's easy 5 stars. So that will plant Phantump's final score at 3.75 stars overall. I really wish that Trevenant was a better Pokemon because it is undeniably awesome. We're rating them all, and sadly, it's just like not quite good enough in most ways. 110 attack is pretty solid, but all of its other stats are not great. Ghost Grass is a very cool typing, but sadly not very good. All of this is even more disappointing because its move pool is both really cool and pretty good actually. It gets moves like Confuse Ray, Leech Seed, Horn Leech, Phantom Force, Wood Hammer, TMs like Earthquake, Return, and Power Punch. And okay, you know what? This move pool is good enough to boost the otherwise not great Pokemon up to 4 stars in battle prowess. And even though you can find Trevenant itself in the end game of X and Y, it's actually, that would make its score lower than just giving it the trade evolution penalty from Phantump, bringing its availability down to 2.5 stars. But as is the case with most ghost types, its concept is incredible. It draws inspiration from so many cultures and stories and scientific facts, specific trees, more myths, legends, histories. It's actually crazy and way too much to mention here, but if you want to rewind and pause and read through the things that I put on screen, you will agree with me that this is very clearly a 5-star concept. And its design is also really awesome. My favorite little detail is that its head, where its little face is very clearly a little Phantump. Almost like this Trevenant burst out of the ground, leaving what was left of that Phantump stump as just the head. It has those almost identical horn-like branches coming off of the side of that helmet. That is a really, really nice touch, and even otherwise, the broken apart tree bark forming like this mouth and then exposing the ghostly body within, the root system as creepy legs, the Cyclopsian eye, all of it. This is an incredible design. I personally like Phantump more, but this is absolutely a perfect 5 out of 5 design-wise for this evolution line. But that trade evolution penalty does keep its final score down at 4.125 stars overall, just short of the Kalos top 5. Pumpkaboo, Gourgeist, Phantump, and Trevenant are supposed to be this almost like duo of ghost grass types in Kalos, but these two are an absolute letdown compared to the others. We're rating them all, and let's see if that's also true in battle. They have the same not very good ghost grass typing and an also very similar stat spread, this time just opting for physical defense instead. They even have an incredibly similar move pool with moves like Confuse Ray and Leech Seed. But this one actually has a signature move called Trick or Treat, which gifts your opponent the ghost typing, which could be pretty useful and is very cool, but not quite enough to raise the score here. We'll keep it at 2.5 stars. Availability is actually pretty different though. Well, not in Kalos, that's still Route 16, but this one's not in Alola at all, and it's actually available basically right away in Galar. So Pumpkaboo's actually averages up to 4 stars. And where Phantump was the spirit of a child possessing a stump, Pumpkaboo decides to usher said children's spirits to the afterlife. What is Pokemon's deal with
off the children. Okay, I'll admit I am just now learning this. Apparently the different size Pumpkaboos actually have a different preference on what stage of person they take to the afterlife. Interesting, but it is also very clearly visually based off of the jack-o'-lantern. But it seems to actually be pretty directly based off of the story of Stingy Jack, a character in folklore who was forced to wander the earth as a spirit carrying nothing more than a turnip lantern. Yeah, I don't see how that's not 5 stars. And for design, I don't dislike Pumpkaboo, but it is admittedly entirely forgettable. The little pumpkin body with the lantern stuff is fine, but I don't understand why it has like a cat face that is nowhere to be found on Gourgeist. This isn't a bad design per se, it obviously very clearly portrays its type combination, but it's not great either. 3 stars. So that does actually give Pumpkaboo the final score of 3.625 stars overall, just below Phantump. Gourgeist is going to be unnecessarily difficult to rate here as we rate them all, so bear with me. For battle prowess, it is of course the pretty mid ghost grass combination that we talked about with the other 3. But its move pool is pretty great, actually. Confuse Ray, Phantom Force, Leech Seed, Shadow Sneak, Seed Bomb, its signature move, Trick or Treat, which gives its opponent the ghost type, along with plenty of TMs for coverage and support. What makes it difficult to rate is that all 4 of the different sizes have completely different stat spreads, which I did forget to mention that's also true for Pumpkaboo, but it is a whole lot less impactful there. For Gourgeist, its defense and special attack stats don't change actually, but all of the other ones do. The small side dumps HP and goes for a lot of speed and decent attack. Average size has, well, averaged out speed and HP. Large size is a bit slower and a bit stronger, and super sized of course goes full into attack and HP. So how do we judge this thing and give it 1 score? Well, honestly, I'm kind of at a loss, but I think that kind of similarly to Trevenant, we can use its pretty incredible move pool to kind of excuse its otherwise okay stats, and it'll get 4 stars. Availability is thankfully very simple, as it just takes that trait evolution penalty from Pumpkaboo's 4 stars down to 3. But where Pumpkaboo was more of a willful guide for spirits through the afterlife, Gourgeist is, well, forceful. It just takes people to the afterlife, like people of all ages, depending on the size of Gourgeist, just like Pumpkaboo, and anybody who falls for its tricks, bye-bye. And like Pumpkaboo before it, Gourgeist is of course based on the jack-o'-lantern and the legend and story which inspired it. This time also adding on some aspects from like the Jack-in-the-Box and some more yokai stuff. Another very easy 5 stars. But its design I think is easily the worst of the 4 ghost grass types in Kalos. I think they went too on the nose and literal with the jack-o'-lantern body, and then they completely abandoned the cat-like look that Pumpkaboo had. And the gourd head of course makes perfect sense, but looks really dumb. I just don't think this is a very interesting or compelling design at all. If we're being completely honest, I think this is a 2-star design, which will actually give Gourgeist the final score of 3.5 stars overall. The ice type would be so much more compelling as an early game type. It's good against the birds and the plants, it's weak against the hikers, rocks, and machops. I will keep banging this drum. We're rating them all, and that is sadly not the case for Bergmite here or most other ice types, as it is found very late and is very weak. Which, since we judge Pokemon based on when they would be used, that 28 speed, 35 special defense, and 55 HP is a major liability. Its attack and defense are good, to be fair, and its move pool is okay, but it's just not good enough to be found around like the 7th gym. 2 stars at best in battle prowess. Shocker though, its availability is not good. You can't get it until after the 6th gym in both Kalos and Galar, so yeah, that's 2.5 stars. And for concept, it's based on icebergs and stalagmites. That's kind of it. Sure, the behavior of it attaching itself to Avalugg does have a real-world name. It's phoresis or something along those lines, common to animals like mites. But still, that's 2 stars in concept. Its design is, of course, very simple. There's not a lot to talk about. It's more or less a little iceberg mite thing. But with that being said, it is at least somewhat cute in its own little way. I like the translucent ice look, at least. The polls have it at 3 stars, and while I may think that's a bit high, I'm not super opposed to it. We'll give it a 3. But sadly, that will stick little Bergmite with the final score of 2.375 stars overall, the worst Kalos score so far. For better or worse, Avalugg is at least a unique looking Pokemon, so can it rise up from Bergmite's worst score in Kalos? We're rating them all, and this is the old Golem conundrum all over again, but dialed up even more. Like the plethora of early gen rock and ground types, it has great attack and defense and decent HP, but really bad everything else. It also has a number of very common weaknesses, so like Golem before it, if you use it correctly and in the right matchups, it can be incredible, but if you don't, it's gone. Its move pool is pretty solid at least. Crunch, Iron Defense, Curse for setup, Avalanche for boosted damage, TMs like Earthquake, Stone Edge, and Gyro Ball. These hyper min-maxed Pokemon are really hard to rate for battle prowess in a playthrough, but I think we'll go with 3.5 stars. Its availability will stay the same as Bergmite's not very good 2.5 stars though, and holy crap, its concept is actually a lot better. Physically, it mostly resembles tabular icebergs and either tortoises or the extinct Atosaur, but it could also take inspiration from Project Habakkuk from World War II, where they plan to make an aircraft carrier made of wood, pulp, and ice. Which makes even more sense when you think about the little Bergmites that attach itself to Avalugg and use it for transportation. This is pretty much directly referenced in the Pokemon Y Dex entry, and that is actually pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. 4-star concept. Though its design has always been kind of the butt of the joke, always being called a table, and then Pokopia doubled down on that by making an Avalugg table in-game. And while being funny and making sense for its concept, being shaped that way doesn't do it any favors visually. It's always looked pretty bad. Now yes, it is fairly detailed with the ice cracks and then those iced over like almost goggles over the eyes, but there's no way that people actually like this thing. I mean, what? You guys voted this thing at 3.5 stars? Okay, I respect it. I definitely don't agree, but we'll be in the middle at 3 stars. So that will at least give Avalugg a final score of 3.25 stars overall. Noibat to Noivern feels like Pokemon attempting to recreate the Magikarp to Gyarados glow up, but failing. We're rating them all, and the difference there is only having to bring your Magikarps to level 20 and be rewarded by one of the best Pokemon of all time, versus for Noibat, it's level 48 and nowhere near as rewarding. Granted, in Kalos, it's not that big of a deal as you find Noibat at level 44, but in Alola, you get it at level 8, and in Galar, you get it at level 20. In which cases, its 245 base stat total is a complete and utter nuisance on your 40-level journey to get evolved. And even if you wanted to use this thing, its move pool is pretty buns anyway. 1 star in battle prowess. And as we've already discussed, its availability is weird. You can't get it in Kalos until right before the 8th gym, but then basically right away in Alola and right after the 3rd gym in Galar. So it still manages to get 3.5 stars in availability. Conceptually though, it's shockingly simple, at least until it evolves. Sure, it has some hints at Wyvern visually, but otherwise it's pretty much just a bat with some hyper emphasis on the echolocation and noise thing that bats already have. Unfortunately, that's pretty boring. 2.5 stars. But with that being said, I do like its design. It's a pretty cohesive, cute little bat dragon thing, even though none of its features are actually cute upon further investigation, like those almost bug-like eyes and mouth are somewhat unnerving, but I do like its little wings and big ears. It's a pretty solid first stage to Noivern. The polls are leaning towards 4 stars, but I think it's a little high. I'll go with 3.5 for design, which will unfortunately land Noibat the final score of 2.625 stars overall and on the Kalos bottom 5. Noivern is one of the coolest Pokemon that is shockingly terrible. We're rating them all, and that may sound surprising because at face value, just looking at its stats, it looks pretty decent. I do have a special guest today to talk about design and concept, but for now, in battle. Its 123 speed and 97 special attack are pretty solid, but it faces a few major issues. One is that good old quad weakness to ice, which is at least pretty avoidable. 2 is the fact that you can't even use this thing unless you drag your useless little Noibat all the way to level 48. And 3, it doesn't even get any of its good moves until way later in the game, actually post-game in most regions. Hey, future me here, so I actually went on a whole rant about how this Pokemon doesn't get any good moves until like the post-game in most regions, which is true if you ignore the fact that the move relearner exists and it's pretty much available right when you would normally get Noivern in most of these regions anyway. So with that being said, I'm not going to give it the 3.5 stars in battle prowess I originally was going to. Instead, I think it's a pretty fair 4. And for availability, as I referenced, dragging your little Noibat 20 to 40 levels to evolve is absolutely absurd, and you get it pretty late game in Kalos anyway. But it still ends up getting 3 stars thanks to Alola and Galar even after the penalties. And now we can finally move on to the positive aspects of this Pokemon, which I will leave to today's special guest.
Noivern is one of my favorite Pokemon, and its design and concept are fantastic. Noivern's name itself is a combination of the word noise and wyvern, a representation of its sound-based abilities and dragon-like inspiration. Real-life bats use echolocation, while wyverns are dragons with 2 legs and 2 wings, both key parts of its identity. The specific bat inspiration may come from the brown long-eared bat, which is a bat that can be found in France and other giant bats such as the fruit bat. But its mythological inspiration may not just stop at the wyvern, as it could have also been inspired by the gargoyles, which are very prevalent in Europe and potentially vampires, but I'll get to that in the design. With Noivern blending concepts and inspirations from nature, senses, and mythology, I can't help but give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. In my opinion, Noivern is one of the best designed modern Pokemon. Its giant ears resemble that of radar dishes or speakers, which convey its sound and sonar ability perfectly. The dark colors on Noivern fit perfectly with its nocturnal and predatory nature, while its purple body and white fur give it a regal, almost vampire-like look. Its frame perfectly blends the speed and agility of a bat with the strength and power of a wyvern, making it not so bulky, but still very physically intimidating. In my opinion, Noivern's design gets a 5 out of 5 stars.
I completely agree with everything that was just said, and so do the polls actually. And that does end up giving Noivern a pretty solid 4 stars overall. Go follow JFK Collectibles, he posts some awesome TCG content, and comment any other creators you'd like to see on Rate 'em All. I have to admit, this is one of the better legendary trios in all of Pokemon. Xerneas is one of the best Pokemon of all time, at least in competitive, so how will it fare as we rate 'em all? Of course, Fairy type as a whole is among the best, but don't forget about its signature ability, Fairy Aura, which boosts its Fairy moves by another 33% on top of Stab Boost. But spamming boosted Moonblast is not all it can do. Geomancy is one of the most absurd moves in all of Pokemon, not to mention plenty of other coverage and pretty much anything else you'd want. But the giant deer in the room is obviously its box art legend stats. I mean, 130-ish in HP and both attacks along with almost 100, and everything else is obviously absurd. This is about as clear of 5-star in battle prowess as you'll see. And for availability, remember, legends are judged on their own scale, and in that case, Xerneas would just barely squeak out 4 stars. But since it's a version exclusive, it gets knocked back down to 3.5. For concept, it of course resembles a deer visually, but maybe more specifically this old deer-like extinct animal. But as a box art legend, it is obviously much more lore heavy. It is said to have slept 1,000 years in the form of a tree and can share eternal life, which makes it a pretty clear line to draw to the world tree in Norse mythology, Yggdrasil. But even more specifically, this stag that I can't pronounce who stands upon the world tree with glowing horns that drip dew. It could also derive from this horned god from Celtic mythology who gifts life. Either way, that's very clearly 5 stars, especially considering its in-game like opposition to Yveltal with a life and death thing. And in design, I have to admit, this is one of the better legendary trios in all of Pokemon. Xerneas absolutely knocks the whole regal deity of life look out of the park. The glowing mystical jeweled horns, the color scheme, the almost like angelic or alien unorthodox hooves and legs. Truly a fantastic legendary design with a great shiny. It is shockingly polling lower than Bacon Bird over here, but still very clearly 5 stars, which will grant Xerneas the final score of 4.625 stars overall and a spot on the Legends top 5. I know Xerneas and Yveltal are like complete perfect opposites to each other, even sharing the exact same stats, but man, I love the Easter eggs in Yveltal's freaking concept. We're rating them all, and yes, I know it's actually Yveltal, but does that mean that they're equal in battle? I'd say no, but it's still very far from bad, obviously. It of course has Dark Aura to boost its stab dark moves even higher, but its best move is oddly enough a flying move, Oblivion Wing. And its move pool otherwise is of course fantastic with plenty of options for damage and coverage. It may not be as broken as Xerneas, but considering these stats and move pool, this is very, very clearly 5 stars. For availability, it is of course the equal and opposites to Xerneas. Being available right before the climax of the Evil Team conflict, but as a version exclusive, lands them both a 3.5 star availability. As for concept, Yveltal is the destruction to Xerneas' life, and therefore takes inspiration from both a Celtic death goddess and an eagle in Norse mythology who sits at the end of the world. But all I see when I see the names Morrigan and Hresfelger are 2 of the most badass women from my favorite video games. Morrigan, the Witch of the Wilds from Dragon Age, and then the former Black Eagle herself, the Empress of Fodland, Edelgard von Hresfelg. It could also be the like unnamed eagle sitting atop Yggdrasil, but yeah, very obviously 5 stars. In design though, while I do personally prefer Xerneas, Bacon Bird here is still pretty awesome. It also has a great shiny, and again, whether I personally like it that much or not, this very clearly does a great job at portraying the god of destruction. The giant red wings with the almost black vein patterns coursing through it, the sleek and focused face with the flowing mane. Yeah, this is very clearly a 5-star design, and the polls very clearly agree. So as it was foretold, Yveltal gets the same 4.625 stars as Xerneas and a spot next to it on the Legends top 5. Xerneas and Yveltal, both having Norse mythological inspirations like Yggdrasil and Hresfelger, are pretty awesome and fitting, but what I did not know is that all 3 of Zygarde's original forms do too.
We're rating them all and we'll get for that, but first, how is Zydog the 10% form in battle? Its stats are of course the weakest, and its 54 HP is definitely a problem, but it does still have a pretty solid 100 attack and 115 speed. And both of its abilities are pretty awesome. Aura Break not only nullifies both Fairy and Dark Aura, but also weakens those types' moves by 25%. And Power Construct, which is admittedly a lot harder to get, changes its form to its complete form when it drops below 50% health, which is insane, and its move pool is also really good. It gets moves like Crunch and Earthquake and Lance Wrath, and then the whole core relearn moves things in Gen 7. But with all that being said, the 10% form stats really hold it back. I think it's a pretty solid 4 stars in battle prowess. Its availability is frustrating because we never got a Pokemon Z, which I'm still mad about, and no, ZA did not count. However, the 10% form isn't even in Kalos at all, actually. It's technically in Alolan form, where you can get it like as soon as you get to Ula Ula, which compared to other legends, that's 5-star availability. But conceptually, as I mentioned in the intro, Zydog here and its other forms all take inspiration from Norse mythology as well. The 10, 50, and 100% forms are all inspired by Loki's 3 children: Fenrir the wolf, Jormungandr the world serpent, and Hel or Hela the goddess of the underworld, all of which are tied to Ragnarok. Not to mention the awesome in-game stuff of having to search and scour the land for the scattered cells to reform and complete this new monster. That's pretty cool. I'm giving it 5 stars because Loki, the shapeshifter, has these 3 children, and then Zygarde has its 3 forms which it can shapeshift into, all based off of those 3 shapeshifters' children. Yeah, 5 stars. But how is its design? Well, when Zydog first released, it was actually my favorite of the Zygarde forms, but as time has passed, it might actually be my least favorite now. Not to say it's a bad design at all, however, it has some awesome details. Most namely would be that green almost leash or rope around Zygarde's neck, which is a call to Gleipnir, I think it was called, the enchanted rope which bound Fenrir. But then there's the glowing, that was a decision. Regardless though, it's still pretty awesome. Alien shapeshifting dog is cool. The polls voted it at a pretty clear 4 stars, and I'm good with 4 stars. So that breaks down Zydog's final score to 4.5 stars overall and gives it a spot on Legends Top 5. Zygarde's 50% form specifically might be one of the coolest legendary Pokemon of all time. We're rating them all, and in battle, it's pretty interesting, mostly due to how different it is in Gen 6 and 7. Its stats, regardless though, are pretty incredible, around 100 in everything and 121 in defense. Pair that with its really solid Dragon Ground typing and its ability which shores up that fairy weakness, add on some great moves in Gen 6 and you have a really solid legendary Pokemon. But in Gen 7, not only did they add this new ability which changes its form to its complete form when it drops below 100% health, but it also added all of these incredible moves much earlier into the game. Oh, and it's actually usable. You can totally use this thing in a playthrough of Pokemon Sun. 5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability, like Zydog before it, is amazing in Alola. You can use it by like Ula Ula Island, but in Kalos, 50% is the only one of its forms that is dragged down by being post-game in its home region, and therefore drags its average down to 3 stars, which is unfortunate, but its concept is of course amazing, as it, like the other 2 Zygarde forms, are based on the 3 Loki children in Norse mythology. 50% is based on Jormungandr, the world serpent, and like 10%'s Fenrir's ties to Ragnarok, Jormungandr does as well, obviously. And of course, again, having to scour the land for the scattered cells is an awesome in-game touch. 5 stars in concept. And in design, this is just one of the most unique looking Pokemon, period. The striking vibrant green against the black, the hexagonal patterns giving it both a sense of something almost alien and something assembled, the frills giving it that air of like authority or power. One of the coolest Pokemon out there, fantastic design. Yet the polls shockingly only had it at 4.5 stars, but I think regardless, this is a 5-star design, which actually ends up giving it the final score of 4.5 stars overall, the same score as Zydog on the top 5. Zygarde's complete form is just a Decepticon or a Digimon or a Gundam, but we love him for that. We're rating them all, and we do have to go over battle prowess, of course, but let me tell you right now, this is clearly 5 stars. It has 216 HP, 121 defense, and around 100 in everything else. Pair those stats with moves like Dragon Dance, E-Speed, 1000 Arrows, 1000 Waves, Core Enforcer, and more by level up. Those stats alone are almost worth 5 stars, but its typing and moves certainly don't hurt. Its availability, however, is complicated. For starters, this form doesn't even exist in Kalos, so we can't ignore the fact that it's post-game in X and Y. And And for Alola, it is more complicated still. You can get Zygarde with the Aura Break ability fairly early into the game in Alola, but as far as I can remember or find, the only way to get Power Construct Zygarde is post-game, and Power Construct is the only way to get the complete form. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that means that availability is going to be capped at 2.5. And conceptually, the 3 Zygarde forms were all inspired by Loki's 3 children in Norse mythology. 10% is Fenrir the Wolf, 50% is Jormungandr the World Serpent, and 100% is Hel or Hela. Now, 100% being based on either Hel or Hela may seem like a bit of a stretch, but it's still cool. She is the goddess of the underworld, or Hel, or Helheim, the realm of the dead. Which, yeah, all 3 of those children have their part to play in Ragnarok, which is awesome. We'll just let it stay 5 stars like the others, but if there are any Norse mythology experts in the comments, please let me know if I'm wrong here. But its design, boy is it cool. The full-blown Decepticon, Digimon, Gundam look is the picture of badass in the world of Pokemon. It doesn't get much more big, bad, imposing legend than this, but that's not to say that its design is shallow. As I mentioned with 50%, that hexagonal pattern really helps give it that look of some alien specimen that was pieced together. And the now red and blues, possibly of the French flag or of Yveltal and Xerneas, play a really nice accent to the already really cool black and neon green color scheme. Polls voted at 5 stars, and I agree. So that does construct Zygarde's complete form, the final score of 4.375 stars overall, and barely a spot on the Legends top 5. Mega Zygarde, upon release, was one of the weirdest, goofiest, and dumbest looking megas we've ever seen, but after some time, it still kinda does. We're rating them all, and thankfully for its sake, that has nothing to do with battle prowess. Where its 216 HP and special attack is obviously ridiculous, but it also has pretty decent defensive spread and 100 speed. You could completely ignore its pretty solid typing and great move pool, and this would still get 5 stars just based on those stats. For availability and concept, I ask you give me a little bit of grace because I admittedly have yet to play Pokemon Legends ZA. But from what I can find, you can find Mega Zygarde in the final mission of the game, which makes sense, but does leave it a 1 star in availability. And from what I can find, Mega Zygarde in concept kind of completely abandons the whole Norse mythology, Loki's 3 children concept basis thing that the other 3 Zygarde forms had.
Unless you count the fact that Hela, at least from Marvel, can like create weapons, I guess then the big canon kind of makes sense, but I don't know if that counts.
And again, I haven't played it yet, so maybe I'm missing some important in-game lore and dialogue, but the Dex entry just says that it Mega evolves to calm a crisis with its unmatched power, which cool. I'm gonna give it a pass since I haven't played its game yet, and we'll let it keep its 5 stars from its base forms, but let me know what I'm missing here. But its design, as I mentioned at the start, upon release, I absolutely despise this thing. But I will admit, the bottom half at least has grown on me, especially since the release of its official art. Ignore the giant blimp cannon and the old Zygarde complete form down there, which has now been like stripped of its armor, revealing its like energy core made up of just raw cells. It's very cool. But the stupid blimp cannon thing ruins it for me, man. And if you think, oh, it's not a blimp or a hot air balloon or whatever, its head is even on fire, like lending even further into the hot air balloon idea. Such a weird and disappointing design for a mega of one of the coolest legendaries of all time. The poll where you could actually see the design you're voting for was really inconclusive, but I think either way, I'm gonna cap this thing out like 3 stars in design. So that does deflate Mega Zygarde's final score down to 3.5 stars overall. It's safe to say that we all would have preferred Diancie to be a Carbink evolution instead of some random legendary Pokemon, right? We're rating them all, and step 1 for that would be to lower its base stat total a tad, because at the moment its 600 base stat total is pretty great. 150 in both defenses and 100 in both attacks is pretty awesome, even with its low HP and speed. But regardless, Rock Berry is a very interesting typing to use, and at least its quad weakness to Steel is fairly rare. And its move pool is solid. You have support with screens and rocks, then you have big damage with either Moonblast or its signature move Diamond Storm, which is 100 base power and can sharply raise your defense. And Diancie also gets some pretty great TMs for setup, coverage, and support. 5 stars in battle prowess. However, unfortunately, as is the case with most mythical Pokemon, it's just not available. You straight up cannot get this Pokemon in Kalos unless you time travel to 2014. Yet conceptually, this is another one of those weird like Fiona to Manaphy relationships where this and Carbink are 100% related, but just not like evolutions of each other. Straight out of the Pokedex, Diancie is literally just a sudden transformation of a Carbink. So why is it a mythical? Does it have some big in-game lore? Does it tie into the regions like Pantheon? Anything? No, not really, but it has some pretty cool inspirations, I guess. Carbink was directly based off of the South American folk tale of the Carbuncle, a little rock creature with a gemstone on its forehead, and therefore so is Diancie. And at least visually, it probably derives from the princess-cut diamonds and or metamorphic rocks. But unfortunately, I really don't see any reason why this should get a higher scoring concept than Carbink, who got 3 stars.
I changed my mind. The princess cut diamond thing is enough for at least an extra half a star, so we'll go with 3.5.
Its design, though, is pretty great. It's supposed to be the loveliest sight in all the world, and I don't know about all that, but it is a successfully pretty Pokemon. The giant pink gemstones in the place of like a crown, a necklace, and hair all at the same time is pretty cool. But as is the case with most Pokemon, putting clothes on it is weird. It's like, I feel like it would have looked better as just a fully like rock and gemstone style princess rock monster. Now, I am recording this before the polls go up, so we'll see how far off I am, but I'm gonna give it 4 stars in design, which unfortunately brings Diancie back down to earth with a final score of 3 stars overall and a spot on the Mythical's bottom 5. The fact that Diancie had the only Mega Evolution originating from the region that introduced Mega Evolution still blows my mind. We're rating them all, and hey, at least they made a good one. In battle, like most Megas, it is insane, of course. 160 in both attacks, then 110 in both defenses, and speed is absurd. And like I said, with its base form, it has great level up moves, pretty solid TM options, and a pretty good typing. There's no reason this shouldn't also get 5 stars. However, in availability, I mean, Diancie already got 0 stars for just not being available outside of a 12-year-old expired event, so I don't see any reason why the Mega should get a different score. But conceptually, the Mega really seems to kind of move away from the original Carbuncle inspiration and really move heavily into the princess cut diamond idea, as well as some possible magical girl power-up transformation inspiration. Still not an amazing concept, but it is better.
4 stars after the Diancie update.
But I do think that I like its base form better than the Mega. It does what it should. It dials up what the base form had to its extreme. The diamond hair and crown growing down into a full-blown diamond dress covering the once rugged and rough rock, finishing the magical princess of gemstones idea really well. And I do like the detail of the little dangly chandelier diamonds at the bottom. Overall, it is a successfully regal and pretty Mega Pokemon. 4 stars for design, which will crown Mega Diancie the final score of 3.125 stars overall, giving it a spot on both the Mythical bottom 5 and the Mega's bottom 5. Hoopa is a really unique Pokemon when you remember it exists. We're rating them all, and we'll get to what I mean, but in battle, as a Mythical, it is of course a monster. Its stats are kind of all over the place, but 150 special attack and 130 special defense are amazing on their own. And it of course gets plenty of powerful moves to take advantage of that, both through level up and TMs. Though oddly enough, it actually gets a different typing upon changing its forms, but this one is Psychic Ghost, which is not good. Sure, you get 2 immunities, but only 2 resistances and 2 quad weaknesses. Now yes, I know, most of its stats are amazing, but its defense and HP are not. And with the existence and a pretty common share of moves like Sucker Punch and Shadow Sneak, I think this Mythical's actually stuck at 4.5 stars for battle prowess. But as is the case with most Mythicals, it's just not available anymore as of like 10 years ago. 0 stars in availability. And as for the concept, this Pokemon absolutely feels like it was made almost entirely for the movie, which is what I mean in the intro. If you have not seen the movie, which I have not, Hoopa is extremely forgettable. But it's not without plenty of deeper inspiration. First and most notably is of course the Djinn or Ginny found across all sorts of different mythologies, cultures, and pieces of media. Made even clearer by the item in-game, the Prism Bottle, which unbounds it, but Unbound will get its own video. But Hoopa also seems to draw inspiration from 2 very specific things. The legend of Neza, I think is how you say it, a deity in Taoism who Hoopa shares many traits with, and the Rhinoceros King from the Journey to the West who also wields a magical ring. Pretty obviously 5 stars there. And its design does incorporate a lot of those things from those previous inspirations, like the horns that come from the Rhinoceros King, the rings that come from both, and the childlike trickster god thing. But I'm not really personally a fan of this Pokemon at all. I don't find its design very good or interesting. But I cannot deny that it does pull off what it's going for very well. This is very clearly a little magical ring-wielding trickster god mythical Pokemon thing. 3.5 stars for design, which will trap little Hoopa down at the final score of 3.25 stars overall. Hoopa Unbound is so much better than its confined form in every way. We're rating them all, and that absolutely includes how it does in battle. Interestingly enough, its type is different. It goes from Ghost Psychic, which has 2 of each, immunity, resistance, and weakness, to Psychic Dark, which is better. It has 1 immunity, but also 1 quad weakness and a regular weakness, but 0 resistances, so still not good. But with these stats, it just doesn't really matter. 160 or 70 in both attacks, 130 in special defense. Sure, it's still frail physically, but I just don't think it really matters as much, especially since you are not quad weak to those really common priority moves anymore other than like first impression in the newer gens. Its move pool is the same, however, and very good across the board once again. Unbound is absolutely 5 stars. And okay, so maybe the Unbound form is a little bit less available than regular Hoopa in game because you do have to find the specific like bottle to unbound it like somewhat temporarily, but less than 0 stars is still 0 stars here. Conceptually, I also prefer the Unbound form, but they are of course bound together. They both take inspiration from Neza, a trickster deity in Taoism who wields magical rings and is depicted with multiple arms, as well as possibly the Rhinoceros King from the Journey of the West who also has a magical ring. But even more clear and obvious is its Jinni inspirations, even with its in-game bottle. But it could also be tied to like demons, devils, Hindu deities, Greek Argonauts, all sorts of different things throughout history. So yes, very, very clearly 5 stars. But where base Hoopa kind of loses me and I don't find very interesting, Unbound does the complete opposite. This absolute monstrosity of an interdimensional magical demon creature is so cool. The horns and teeth helping portray the demon thing, the stereotypical Jinni boots, the arms and rings phasing through existence. Incredibly cool design that absolutely nails what it was going for. The polls aren't complete yet as of this recording, so we'll see what you guys think, but I'm definitely giving this thing 5 stars in design, which does grant Hoopa Unbound the final score of 3.75 stars overall among the other mythicals on their top 5. Volcanion is, hot take, so disappointing for a first fire and water type Pokemon. We're rating them all, and before we get to that, how is it in battle? Well, Fire Water is actually just as good as it is awesome. It has as many quad resistances as it has weaknesses, and it even has an immunity thanks to Volcanion's Water Absorb. And its moves are also really awesome. Flame Charge, Flare Blitz, Scald, and its signature move Steam Eruption. Along with plenty of TM options for coverage and support, of course. Pair that with its very, very good, but still pretty balanced stat spread, and this definitely gets 5 stars in battle prowess. But it's a mythical Pokemon, so you know what that means. It is entirely unavailable nowadays and gets 0 stars. And its concept is surprisingly shallow and kind of messy. It's most obviously based on geysers and or steam engines, but also like artillery. Not only that, but it also then mixes in this mythical creature, which is like a mixture of lions, dogs, and dragons. Okay, I mean, that's cool, but what? This seems very much so like a little bit of this and a little bit of that. 3-star concept. And then its design, unfortunately, absolutely follows in that footstep. I think that we all give Volcanion a pass because it's the first fire water type. It's kind of based on like volcanoes. It's a mythical Pokemon. But when you actually look at this design, it's not good. The face is blatantly ugly and weird. Then it has this like volcano-shaped body, which cool, makes sense. But then the segmented legs that act as artillery and the giant ring arch thing, I just don't understand. Is it cool? Sure, but it's so messy and busy. I'm not sure where the polls will land because I'm recording this before they go up, but I think this is like a 3-star design at best. So that will cool down Volcanion to the final score of 2.75 stars overall and landing at a spot on the Mythical's bottom 5.